everybody. Welcome to today's event. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Lyndsay Butler, and I hail from southern Alberta, a place called Gladys Ridge. My family's been there since 1886, so that makes me a 7th generation Albertan. And I don't think we even reproduce that quickly in my family. We've just been here forever. Anyways, I wrote this song called Prairie Settler Song as a tip of my hat to all of us prairie people. There's something extra in our blood that makes us resilient as heck. We like to work hard, but we play hard. We take family and friends seriously and community. And I'm so proud to be a part of that group. This is Prairie Settler Song. They call this land the prairies. We call this land our home. Great-great-granddaddy broke this ground over 100 years ago. They came across the ocean. They traveled far and wide through this wild land unknown, and it's a wonder they survived. Yippee-yi-yi. Yippee-yi-yi, yippee-yi-yo. Traded up some horseshoes for a bag of pine needle tea, remedied from a medicine man and a headdress made of beads. You can hear the coyotes howling, getting closer by the night. New calf hits the ground and it's gone before daylight. Yippee-yi-yi, yippee-yi-yo. Yippee-yi-yi. Staking my claim right here till the dust comes out these bones. Yippee-yi-hey, seeds are gonna sow, only with these bleeding hands and a dream made out of stone. The trail's cutting deeper, the ruts are wearing down. A wagon ride across Rupert's land, still 80 miles from town. The planting season's burnt up, the earth was hot and dry. Praying down on our knees for the rain to fall from the sky. Yippee-yi-yi. Yippee-yi-yo, yippee-yi-yi, yippee-yi-yo, never gonna go. Staking my claim right here till the dust comes out these bones. Yippee-yi-hey, seeds are gonna sow, only with these bleeding hands and a dream made out of stone. Yippee-yi-ho! Thank you. All right, so at the back here, now we had some keeners in the room, so some of you beat me here, but thank you. We appreciate the keeners. I do have some albums and CDs for sale by Paula at the desk table back there. And I got a Sharpie. If you think I'm really cool and you want me to sign it, I will do that free of charge. You just gotta buy the thing. Anyways, I got a couple songs here for you. I'm supposed to entertain for 30 minutes, which I haven't had a lot of shows lately, so I never know what's going to happen here. But anyways, if I focus, it goes better. But I like people, so whatever. Anyways, this next tune is called Trailer Park Pretty, and it's on the album. Same with the last one there. I got a green lawn chair from the dollar store sitting out on my front porch. Last week's laundry is hanging on the line. It might not be much, but it's what I've got. I'm high rolling on the corner lot. Welcome to my home, sweet double wide. Well, the screen door's broke, but so am I. I'm getting good at getting by, and if I had AC, I'd head it work just fine. I got Dolly Parton on cassette. If you're looking for the good life, well, this is it. The grass is greener here in Paradise City. I'm sitting trailer park pretty. Well, my hand-me-down Buick is in the drive. Only 3 ball ties, but hey, she's my ride. Duct tape seats and she used to be maroon, but Lord, she's rusty. Stop on by and pour a whiskey sour. It's the Redneck Trailer Happy Hour, just past 12 every Tuesday afternoon. Well, the screen door's broke, but so am I. I'm getting good at getting by, and if I had AC, I bet it'd work just fine. I got Dolly Parton on cassette. If you're looking for the good life, well, this is it. The grass is greener here in Paradise City. I'm sitting trailer park pretty. Town with my head held high, fit for royalty, literally Miss Corn Queen 99. Well, the screen door's broke, but so am I. I'm getting good at getting by, and I'm representing Sunnyvale pride. You know, like the Trailer Park Boys? Cause I'm cranking Dolly's greatest hits. If you're looking for the good life, well, you found it. The grass is greener here in Paradise City. It's a little overgrown, but I'm still whistling Dixie. I'm sitting trailer park pretty. Thank you. Now, this tune is not by an original Albertan, but we imported him back in the 70s or 80s from Ontario, and we gladly called him an Albertan from then ever on. Here's some Mr. Ian Tyson for you. There's a young man that I know whose age is 21. He comes from down in southern Colorado, just out of the service. He's looking for some fun someday soon. Going with him someday soon. My parents cannot stand him 'cause he rides the rodeo. My father says that he will leave me crying that I would follow him right down the roughest road I know. Someday soon, going with him someday soon. When he comes to call, my pa ain't got a good word to say. I guess it's 'cause he was just as wild in his younger days. So blow you old blue northern, blow my love to me. He's riding in tonight from California. He loves his damned old rodeo as much as he loves me. Someday soon, going with him someday soon. Guess it's 'cause he was just as wild in his younger days. So blow you old blue northern, blow my love to me. He's riding in tonight from California. He loves his damned old rodeo as much as he loves me. Someday soon, going with him someday soon. Someday soon, going with him someday soon. Someday soon, going with him someday soon. Thank you. So, how many of you guys have been following Jason's show for like 3-4 years now? Somewhere in there? The Jason Lavigne show? Hands up. Anybody? Okay, couple, okay. So I've been on the show a couple times, which was super cool, and just nice to be around like-minded people and not have to watch my politically incorrect tongue so much. And I'm not swearing or anything. I'm just, telling you how I feel about our dumpster fire going on. Anyways, how I met Jason, actually. So I was the singer that was down in Coots during the hey, we don't like what you're doing business. And I actually got to play for 2 countries at one time. I don't know if that's a thing anywhere else, but that was kind of cool for me. Bucket list. Played to Canada and the U.S. Got some U.S. followers out of it. It was nice. And I just thought I just was so confused by the whole thing. And I needed to get down there and see if it was really bad, as bad as the media was saying it was, because I had friends that were down there. So I went, I brought my guitar, and I played some tunes, tried to give them some hope and inspiration to keep going. I mean, it's wild to me because all over the amount of protests and rallies that I've played at, some of my biggest crowds, we're talking like 10,000 people, which I think is okay, and I'll take that any day. People that I really want to be my fans, thank you. The weather always held out for us. It would be cold and wanting to blizzard, and then it was time for the rally to start in Okotoks, which was like my local one, and the clouds would part and the sun would come out. And it just shocks me every time because I don't think what we were doing was really wrong, it just would have been horrible weather, don't you think? God would have been like, no, rain now. No, he's like, yes, sunshine. I don't want that girl's fingers to freeze. Anyways, that's how I know Jason. Anyways, I met him down in Lethbridge when the Coots 4 trial was going on, and just hit it off immediately. We have our little group that's turning into a big group that, again, I'm just really proud to be a part of. Anyways, I'm going to sing some more songs now, but I just wanted to give you a, hey, why is this girl here? That's my freedom bio. And then, I kind of got blacklisted a little bit in the music industry because I sing freedom songs. But anyways, that's for a later story. Anyways, this song is fairly new. It's only a year and a bit old, and it's called I'll Go. She never let anyone tell her what to do, how to live, or who to love. Fierce like the devil, love you like an angel, praise to something up above. With a little danger and a touch of sparkle, she got mystery behind those eyes. And if you're brave enough to think you can tame her, she'd be one hell of a prize. She likes the burn of good whiskey, runs wild like them horses. I dare you to try to tell her no. She's soft but she's stubborn, and when you can't hold her, don't tell me I didn't tell you so. She's a little bit of woe, but she's all gold. She's got stories that she keeps hidden, like all the times her heart's been broke, and all the bridges gone up in flames. She just laughs at the smoke. There's nothing she wouldn't do for those she cares for. She'd go to hell and back. Best you think twice before you cross them. Pray to God she don't come back. She likes the burn of good whiskey, runs wild like them horses. I dare you to try to tell her no. She's soft but she's stubborn, and when you can't hold her, don't tell me I didn't tell you so. She's a little bit of wow, but she's all gold. Some will say she's just too much. Well, you can't look, but you better not touch. She likes the burn of good whiskey, runs wild like them horses. I dare you to try to tell her no. She's soft but she's stubborn, and when you can't hold her, don't tell me I didn't tell you so. She's a little bit of wow, but she's all gold. She's a little bit of wow, but she's all gold. Thank you. Two more, okay. Trying to stay on time here. I don't time when I'm talking, so that's what really that's the variable. All right, what do I got here for you? I feel like you guys could use a funny song. Are you good with that? Right? Who writes funny songs these days? Like, I don't know. I feel like Corblund kind of let me feel like it was okay to write funny songs. So anyways, actually, the highlight of my year of 2020, because wasn't that everybody's favorite year, Not a lot of competition for my highlight, but even if it happened now, it probably still would be. I actually got to open for Cor Blund in Calgary at the Wild Horse Saloon and then sing duets with him because Jada Dreyer was not around. So, and I honestly sent him a message and said, "Hey, Corb, I'm going to be at your show Thursday. Should I sing the Jada Dreyer duets?" And I totally didn't expect him to get back to me because, I mean, how many messages does he get a day? And he messaged me back, was like, "Linz, that's awesome. Here's my phone number. Give me a call." Sometimes you just have to ask. And if you don't, the answer is always no. That's what you have to take home. It's the only advice you're going to get from me all day. I think it's not bad. All right. Anyways, here's the funny song. Focusing. Remember. Here we go. This one's called... What's it called? I don't know. Back Where You Belong. It's on the album. It's on the album. Don't wanna see your face at the grocery store. Don't wanna hear your truck drive by my house anymore. I don't wanna know how you're screwing the neighbors over. It's about time you go back where you belong. Go back where you belong, to the middle of nowhere. Go back where you belong. Well, it's only fair you go back where you belong, and your mommy will kiss it better. It's about time you go back where you belong. Not gonna miss picking up your dirty underwear. Not gonna miss the sink covered in your black whisker hairs. Not gonna miss all your selfish moaning and complaining. It's about time you go back where you belong. Go back where you belong, to the middle of nowhere. Go back where you belong. Well, it's only fair you go back where you belong, and your mommy will kiss it better. It's about time you go back where you belong. I feel like I wrote this song about a boy, but you guys can add whatever political party or globalist organization you feel like you want to add into here and say I wrote it about them too. That totally works with me. I'm gonna keep the couch, you're half and mine. I'm gonna stay miles away from your crazy ass bloodline. I'm gonna keep the barbecue, and I'm taking the dog. It's about time you go back where you belong. Go back where you belong, to the middle of nowhere. Go back where you belong. Well, it's only fair you go back where you belong, and your mommy will kiss it better. It's about time you go back where you belong. Go back where you belong. No one will miss you when you're gone. It's about time you go back where you belong. Thank you. All right, I got one more tune for you, and then I believe the panel starts. Or Jason's gonna talk, or something other than me. Anyways, this song is the kind of my icebreaker to get to meet all of you amazing people. And like I said, just being around like-minded people just makes me feel not crazy, that like common sense is still alive in the world somewhere. In all of the little nooks and crannies that we live in, and hopefully it starts taking over the world, and that's my goal, and I pray for it every night. Anyways, thank you again so much for coming out. Thank you, Jason, for having me on today. And can we get a huge round of applause for Martin, who has been doing sound for the past 2 days? He's making me sound pretty good up here, and I'm so appreciative of it. I didn't have to hold these speakers in myself. Yes! All right. Awesome. I got one more tune for you. And again, thank you for coming out and just good people. I love it. Makes me cry a little bit. I'm trying to sing, so we're not going to do that. This one's called Freedom, and it's all over the internet, and you should know all the words. It's my favorite F word. For every one of our loved ones sent overseas, friends, fathers, sisters, brothers, so we could live free. Those brave souls laid down their lives for you and me. Looking down upon us now, do you think they believe we're asking freedom? Where are you? Please don't turn your back on us now. Many fought and died for you. I pray to God we never lose you. Freedom, freedom, oh freedom. Now this world is spinning crazy. You say you're doing fine. When I look around, I wonder, have they just broke your spine? What are you gonna tell your children? Can you look them in the eye? When they ask you how the storm went down, can you say you held the line? Freedom, where are you? Please don't turn your back on us now. Many fought and died for you. I pray to God we never lose you. Freedom, freedom, oh freedom. Are we gonna rise together? We take a stand. Or will you bow down and break to their every command? The whole world's watching you. It falls in all our hands. For the true north, strong and free, our home and native land. Freedom, where are you? Please don't turn your back on us now. Many fought and died for you. I pray to God we never lose you. Freedom, where are you? Please don't turn your back on us now. Many fought and died for you. I pray to God we never lose you. Freedom, freedom, oh freedom. Freedom, freedom, oh freedom. Thank you so much. I'm Lyndsay Butler.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much. Another round for Lyndsay, please. If you're interested in her music, there's some albums in the back there, and you can throw a little thing in the tip jar. Thank you so much, Lyndsay, for being out here. She is one of my favorite artists because she's one of the ones that stood up with the rest of us and paid the price. All right? When you stand up against the system and the machine, you pay the price. But it's still worth it, right? We want to make sure that we're healthy and we have a future here in Alberta. And this is exactly what her songs are all about. Lyndsay, I love you. Thank you for being here. You saw her yesterday too?
I said I voted for you yesterday.
Give this man applause. Thank you very much. Stood in line for an hour to go ahead and have change here in Parkland. I appreciate that a lot. So I am Jason Lavigne. I'm the host of the Lavigne Show. And I've been looking for the truth for a couple years now as an independent journalist. And in November 2024, I put my hat in the ring for the People's Party of Canada to go ahead and represent Parkland riding. You're currently sitting in it. So if you live around here, you may find my name on that ballot. But we're going to go into the conversation here today, which is about Alberta's future, because there's a lot of conversation about the independence of Alberta, whether we're looking for absolute sovereignty, whether we have a referendum that says yes, whatever the path forward, I'm the type of guy that can bring that forward for you. So I'm looking forward to representing Alberta and make sure that we have the change that we solely deserve. And I think it's about time that this conversation is had. And I'd also like to thank the Alberta Prosperity Project for being here. So there's a table back there. If you haven't grabbed a pamphlet or signed up, I would encourage you to do so.
Yeah.
And Dr. Michael Wagner is going to be joining this panel, and his books are back there too. So if you can go ahead and support him and pick up a book, 2 or even 6, I believe you have back there. He makes my little book look lonely, but I also wrote a book called Bearing Witness because I strongly believe this is what we need to work on here in Canada, actually globally, is people need to stand up and bear witness. Now, this book came out of the fact that I sat down with some people from church, and we were really upset about the drag storytime hour happening in our neighborhood, and we were wondering, what should we do? And I said, well, let's go watch. Let's bear witness. Let's take one of the seats and see what's going on. And from that, the conversation came up about, well, why don't we do that as a society anymore? You know, snitches get stitches. You know, those are witnesses. Whistleblowers, it's very dangerous for them now. So I wrote a book about that, so I can give you tips about how to be legal, how to get ready for what's to come, how to hold your camera even in order to capture the events, and how to stay safe. So we got all those books back there, so if you can support us by going ahead and pick up a copy or two, and while we're here with a pen, we'll even sign it for you. Right, Michael? Yes. So I also want to say thank you to my wife and family who are joining me here today. Without them, none of this is possible. The fact that I'm running is because my wife supports me, and she definitely encourages me. So thank you, Paula. I appreciate that. And then a big thank you to our panel today. I am so blessed and honored that as I'm doing my show, people are saying yes to come on, because there's really not very many platforms out there that really listen and have the guests come on and really tell us what's going on. We're live, unedited. We do it at least once a day, a couple hours. So if you haven't seen the Lavigne Show, I would highly encourage you to check it out. Rumble is where you'll find everything because YouTube likes to delete our stuff. And you can find it on X as well, but Rumble has a good catalog, so you can go check that out. So Theo Fleury was one of the first people I reached out to for this particular event, and he immediately said, yeah, let's do that, because let's have this conversation. We also have Katherine Kalichek here, who's going to join the panel to talk about her views about separation. She's got the divorce papers ready. She's ready to go. She's not waiting. And look at that, Katherine. They love you already. And then Art Hanger is joining us as well. I'm looking up to him as a previous MP. He is somebody I'm spending some time with. I've seen him at several events now, and I couldn't be more pleased that he made the journey here today to speak with all of us. So the format that we're going to do here is I'm going to have each one of them come up, introduce themselves, and then we'll sit down and have a conversation. I would encourage you to get your questions ready, because at one point near the end, we'll have you come up and share a mic with you and go ahead and answer your questions. But first, we're going to kind of talk about what is Alberta's future? What could it look like? And why are we coming together in this hotel and fighting for it? Well, I think it's worth it. I think the future that my boys need is something that we can provide here. So I'm really honored to have everybody join us. And Art, let's go ahead and start with you. If you don't mind, we'll have you join and give you a bit of an introduction and let everybody know why you made the journey out here to Spruce Grove with us today. You also get first choice of seats when you're done.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. My name is Art Hanger. I'm an Alberta boy, born and raised out in that Three Hills area of the province on a farm. Enjoyed my farm life, loved farming. We weren't well off when I grew up, but we certainly had a good upbringing in that community. It was a rewarding one. Now, I got a lot of thoughts on my mind I wanted to express, but I'm going to sort of summarize and maybe cut them short. But after some years on the farm, I knew I had a calling to go into the police department, and I took that calling up probably about my mid-20s, and I joined the Calgary City Police. And I already had a fixed idea about what good policing was because I saw the early parts of what was about to be abandoned as policing in this province. So I became very frustrated with my the ability to police properly. One, I knew that we were given authority, power to arrest, to do what is right for the benefit of the citizen. And the second, we were also given the ability to use our second power, which was discretion. And that was taken away as over the years as I policed. And it spurred me when I saw the changes in the law that brought immigrants into our country through an illegal process called the refugee claimant system. And they wouldn't even put their foot on Canadian soil, and they were already victimizing people right across this country at a substantial rate. And that was back in the 70s. It's far worse now. Our whole system, our whole culture is now being threatened by that. Very, very same thing. So that spurred me to challenge a lot of the system. And one day, lo and behold, the Reform Party was born. I joined the Reform Association of Western Canada, and from there I took on the role of helping build the party. And in Northeast Calgary, I decided at one point to join the ranks of those that wanted to be elected. And I became a member, or I became actually one of the candidates in the Calgary riding of Calgary Northeast. And that was a very difficult riding because it's very multicultural, and that was my challenge. But I rose to the challenge and I won the 93 election. And if you remember, and there are some in here in this room that will remember, that the Reform Party was born when the Conservative Party was in power, because they never fixed what Trudeau did to begin with. They never fixed it. And in fact, they even added to it. The problems that we now face today were much on the shoulders of the Conservative Party as it was on the Liberal Party at the time. And that was something that really hit home to me. And so I saw this breakdown in our society as time was going on. And in 92 actually, I threw my hat into the ring, was elected in 1993, and I became part of the reform movement in Ottawa. We swept the West. We had it in our hand. We had it all in our hand, and all the Western provinces. And as a result, we went to Ottawa with that in mind, and with one thing that was clear in our mind: we represented those that elected us, not the messenger boys for Ottawa to bring back into the riding. It's all reversed now, but that's where it was. And so I became part of that team. We pushed until 2000, and because we never gained any more ground, it was decided by those above that we should now join back up with the Conservative Party. We had reduced them to 2 seats. And then now all of a sudden, we're going to hand the reins back to them. And that's exactly what happened. We handed the reins back. And when we handed the reins back, they were overjoyed. One of the senators, Hugh Segal, came up to me and said, you know, Art, we thank you for all the work that you guys have done in the Reform Party up to this point, and now we'll take it from here. And it's the same old garbage. You know, the Eastern Bloc and the mentality of the elites there, they had control back. From 2 seats, back into control. And there we stood. We were pushed to the side in a way, the reformers were. There was a huge fight in 2000. And it was all over philosophy, really, when it came right down to it. The way that the old parties were working now crept in, you know, the manipulation of the voter system, the whole bit was disheartening. I stayed for 2 more terms after that, and I left. But Harper took over, and he basically remained as one of the elitist type politicians that we had, and it just continued on. So that brings me up to almost now, and I look back over those years, and it was good politics. So at the beginning, good politics. We represented what the people wanted, number one, under Preston Manning. But that was diminished and extinguished, I should say, by going back into the old system. And so that's where we sit today as our political environment. It's very, very troubling because it's still run by the Eastern elite. Yeah, if you want to call them the Laurentian elite, it is. It truly is. And that's a hard nut to crack because they're all captured by it one way or the other. So I retired from politics in 2008, and I was, not happy with how I left, what the reasons were that I left. But it was I couldn't handle the process there at that time until COVID came along, and then I realized that I can no longer sit on my patio and go back and forth in my rocking chair. Can't do it. There's too many. There are too many of our young people coming up that need help, they need guidance, they need information. And so I'm throwing myself back into the ring. I have been for the last 4 or 5 years in one form or another. And I applaud men like Jason and others that are standing up in the front line with these podcasts. I think that's the only place you're going to get information. So thank you for that, Jason. I appreciate it. And I'll turn this mic over back to you. And I as long as I have some ability, I'm going to throw whatever I have into this arrangement here of making our, whether it's Alberta independence or something similar, I'm for it. So.
Just when Art thought he got away, we pull him right back in. Because he's very right. The old system got back in. With 2 seats, they managed to take over again. They made a bunch of threats. And that's where there was true splitting of the vote. They were making sure that, over in the East, we were not getting support. And this was a Canadian Alliance at the time, right? Yeah. And that's where we ran into trouble. Maxine stood on this very spot just yesterday, where he explained to everybody that he looked at Preston Manning in the little blue book and took some ideas from there to go ahead and start up the PPC. And I do think that mission can be accomplished. It may not be fully this election. We may need to see a little bit more conservative pain before we all take that step again. But if we can elect even just 1 seat, that's all it took to start the Reform Party. The by-election in Beaver Creek, 1 seat. The next election, 52. And balance of power was rightfully back with conservatism and reform. The official opposition was after that. But yes, the big mistake was Harper We thought he was going to help. But if you take a close look at that record, Agenda 2021, you ushered that one in. Agenda 2030 under Trudeau, and we're seeing Agenda 2050 under both Carney and Pierre. We had Preston Manning just a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago. He did an opinion piece where he said, Alberta, the West is upset again. They're frustrated again. It's happening again. Even more than when he was doing the Reform Party. And Carney was pretty clear. Unite Canada, we don't need to listen to this. Let's stay together. Pierre said the same thing. Pierre forgot where his party came from and who started that. He turned his back on Preston, distanced himself. What he really did was he turned his back on Alberta and distanced himself. So we only need one seat. They could be that canary in that coal mine, tell you what's really going on. They can't shut me up. They can complain. And this guy's vote is going to help us get there. So I definitely hope that there's more people that are listening and on the fence and understand that split the vote. That's to scare you. And a lot of people are voting against Carney, not for Pierre. And they've actually said to us, I'm picking the lesser of two evils. You're still picking evil. Okay? So Alberta is where this can happen again. And if there is a chance to save Canada, and if Alberta steps up and says, I'm leaving, and just like a bad marriage, that might be the trigger to have a conversation, negotiation, and possibly some resolutions. And if we don't get there, we got 2 feet, cowboy boots. We'll stand on them and make some change. So thank you for your support.
I should point out the majority of the ridings, federal ridings in Alberta, have predominantly got about 70% conservative votes in the past.
Correct. So 74% here.
70 is 35, and it only leaves 30 for the rest of the parties.
Correct.
Splitting that vote doesn't make any difference whatsoever.
Correct. He did his math. So yeah, here in Parkland, it's 74%, so 37 each. If we split it right down the middle, that leaves 26 for all the other parties combined. And NDP had 18 in the last election. There is no way this is going anything but conservative. So you actually have a choice this time. You don't have to do the default vote. And by the way, it's over by the time it hits Manitoba.
That's right. Yeah.
So let's go ahead and make a purple one.
It's Kitchener. Never mind.
By Kitchener, you're not wrong. Not even Thunder Bay. Yeah. No, he's not wrong. He's not wrong. So I am going to pledge my support to Alberta. Max stood here with me, as I said exactly that. I represent Parkland and the best interests of Parkland, because that's what representation is. And Art put it perfectly. This is why we need to listen to the people. This is why I'm doing events like this. They're free. I'm not charging you $200 a head like that other guy. You can come here free and enjoy yourself and get some information. And no matter what happens in this election, I will continue to do that. We'll do live events. I'll do my show, because information is the key forward, and we absolutely have to keep that going. Thank you. Now, I better get her up here soon because she's a lawyer and she's, counting by the minute here. But Katherine Kalichek is one of my favorite guests that I've had on my show because she is bold, she's unwavering, and she stands very strong. She absolutely can articulate the needs of Alberta like nobody else I know. And yeah, her rate's pretty fair, especially for today. So here we go with Katherine Kalichek. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jason, and thank you, everybody, for coming out today. Well, I'm a lawyer. Don't hold that against me. Trying to be a recovering lawyer, but that's proving to be more difficult. I'm a family law lawyer, so I'm very well versed with divorce. I've been divorced myself, and a lot of people are referring to this next chapter for Alberta as a divorce from Canada, and there are a lot of similarities, definitely. But I first became acquainted with independence during COVID. I wasn't a separatist at that time, and I met actually the first iteration of APP a few years ago when it was just starting up and running. I knew something was definitely wrong with the COVID scam, and I was at that point, I had co-founded Lawyers for Truth, and I was speaking all over the province, mostly at rallies in Calgary, And my message the whole time was do not comply. And so I had a very, very strong message that I was trying to encourage people to follow. I realized, though, because I am a lawyer and I was seeing the trajectory of my profession, that we were not going to get a lot of change within the current structure. The institutionalized structure that has the institutionalized creep that has actually taken over most of Western society. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean, we have a Law Society of Alberta that governs lawyers in this province, 11,000 of us approximately. And during COVID, while everybody was locked in their homes, the Law Society saw fit to change the rules to embolden themselves to create a program called The Path, and it was cultural competency training that made it a requirement for every lawyer in the province of Alberta to take this cultural competency training, or we were not going to be allowed to practice law. I've been practicing for over 20 years in this province, and as a self-governing profession, we've always been allowed to do our own self-education in accordance with the area of practice that we were practicing. But what the path was this Indigenous cultural competency training. And it was about 5 hours long online, and we had to answer questions appropriately, according to what the Law Society had put out, in order for us to pass. A colleague of mine, Roger Song, who is an amazing individual, he grew up in the Cultural Revolution in China. And when he saw the cultural competency training requirement for all lawyers in the province of Alberta, he immediately understood what was happening. And what was happening was that we were being indoctrinated and we were being forced into an political ideology that if you did not agree with, it didn't matter. You were not going to be able to pursue your profession without taking this training. And he's actually now challenging the Law Society, and his judicial review is going to be happening on May 6th in Calgary. And he was very brave, and about 50 of us lawyers got together to try to challenge the Law Society. But what we saw was that, just like kind of the numbers with COVID, we figured that out of 11,000 lawyers that attended the special general meeting that we had put together to challenge the Law Society by requiring us to take this cultural competency training, about 3,600 people showed up. It was an online meeting, and about 25% of us voted in favor of abolishing the rule that allowed the Law Society to do this training. And this is kind of what I'm seeing across our province and across the country and basically across the world. We have a situation where people are fed up, but not enough of us are fed up. But I realized during that time that the only way we are going to have a hope in changing things from the institutional creep that is causing the socialism to take over our province and our nation in our Western Hemisphere is if we change the laws. So it's not going to be and the old boys club is, if you want to call it that, the old boys club, the old girls club, whatever you want to call it, it's alive and well, and it's almost impossible to penetrate. So that's why I turned my own sights to politics in the last provincial election, and I ran with the Independence Party of Alberta and in Old Stidsbury Three Hills, because I realized that in order for us to make effective changes within these organizations like the College of Surgeons, Physicians and Surgeons, the Law Society of Alberta, our universities, our governments, in order for us to be able to change anything, we're going to have to get people who share the values of our neighbors elected, either in the Ledge and in Jason's case in Parliament. I kind of gave up on trying to reform Canada during that time, and I'm not too sure if it's possible. In fact, I think it's probably not possible at all. But what I do find inspiring about the PPC party is that Max, first of all, almost all of their policies I align with from a values perspective. And when I was running in the last election, we were still facing the same rhetoric. Don't split the vote. We only, you know, all that kind of stuff that's being thrown out right now by the mainstream parties. But over time, it's become very clear to me that if we do not, as individuals, vote our conscience and our values, we get garbage in and we get garbage out. And that's exactly what's happening now, and it's going to continue to happen. So the PPC aligns with my values. And so I'm going to be supporting the PPC. In addition, I've met Max a number of times, and I feel confident that he understands the concerns that Albertans have from many different perspectives, mostly the economic perspective, especially with equalization. And he's prepared to actually work with Alberta and support Alberta in changing that program and that in the equalization payment. But he also is, and the party also is a party that's standing up for the values, the social conservative values that I believe the mainstream conservatives have lost, including here in Alberta under the UCP, which I believe is conservative in name only. So I'm looking forward to having this conversation. I have lots to say about it, but it is important that we do something different. The campaign slogan that I had during my campaign was nothing changes if nothing changes. And we really need to stop voting out of fear, and we need to start voting out of faith and according to the values that we hold dear, because if we as individuals don't stand up for ourselves, nobody will. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to acknowledge that Dr. Hodgkinson just arrived. And as we were talking about the College of Physicians and Surgeons, hey, my supporters are here too. College of Physicians and Surgeons, it reminded me, you're absolutely right, they use it as a tool now to silence people. And the Law Society is no different. They're actually using it as a tool to silence people. When I was doing my show about a year and a half ago, I had this gentleman on, you may know him, Donald Best, and he was doing a report. You know, a bunch of people reached out to him and said, hey, I've got some concerns. So he did a report, had to do with fundraising here in Alberta, and I had him on the show. And what did that get me? A Law Society complaint. Because I actually have a license in Ontario as a paralegal. I worked really hard to get that license, maintain it, earn it. So they went after it. It took 6 months of investigation, lots of interviews, a lot of paperwork, a lot of hours. But I won that particular one. But unfortunately, he got appealed. The people were not pleased that I actually succeeded because I did nothing wrong. So they went after it again with an appeal. That one took a year. 2 days ago, I got the results. I've been cleared. It took me longer to fight for that license than to earn it. It was a 2-year program that I doubled up and did it in a year. Honors, got it done on my first try, but it took a year and a half to try and keep it. These are the tools that the system will use against people. So you'll see most of the people on my show had their licenses attacked, revoked, stolen from them. And Dr. Hodgkinson, Dr. Chris Shoemaker, Dr. Trozy, and so many more. Because this is how they control us. They take away your livelihood. They say you're spreading misinformation. To whose definition? To whose definition? If we can't debate it, then is it really misinformation? The scientific process is debate. It's supposed to change, not be trademarked and some gentleman down in the US called himself the science. That's not how this is supposed to work. But I think the tides are turning. We're starting to get some victories. We're still taking some losses. And I can't help but think about Tamara Leach and Chris Barber right now as they're waiting for their sentencing. Barber reached out and he put a post up and said, they're coming after the truck, Big Red. They want to seize it. This is the type of punishment that people who stand up have to face. It's horrible, but it's written that we win, because this is really a spiritual war that we're in right now. We're fighting evil. Now, my next guest here is Dr. Michael Wagner, and I had him scheduled about 20 minutes ago, but I kept him waiting on purpose because that's what they do to us too. But come on up. And really nice to meet him. This is my first time having an interview with him. So thank you for joining.
Great.
Have yourself.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, Jason. So I guess for the purposes of this meeting, I'm one of the people who has been a separatist, at least not consistently, but I became a separatist when I was a teenager, and that was in 1980-81. Like, I was in high school when Pierre Trudeau brought in the National Energy Program, and something triggered something in me, and for the first time, I became involved in politics. Like, I joined a political party and a political organization. I joined WestFed. That was my first organization, if anybody remembers WestFed, from 1981, and then it folded and I joined the Western Canada Concept. I mean, I was just a teenager. I wasn't old enough to vote, but I passed out pamphlets for my candidate for the Western Canada Concept Party in 1982. So again, I couldn't even vote in that election, but I was just really emotionally affected by what was going on, and I wanted to fight for my province. So I stayed a little bit involved in the Western Canada Concept, but it faded away. Like, I was naive. I was a teenager, so I didn't really accomplish anything, but I just felt like I had to do something. Then for a little while, I was involved in the Reform Party, and as I mentioned to Art, I was actually in Calgary Northeast at that time in 1992, and so I was at his nomination meeting and I supported him. So I only met him for the first time a couple years ago, but it was quite a privilege because I was sure he was the right guy. And the Reform Party was the right idea at the time. Like, the Reform Party, the motto was the West wants in. We'd been through the Trudeau experience and the Mulroney experience. They would not listen to us. The people in Ottawa would not listen to us. And many of us, like me, we wanted out. But Preston Manning had a different idea. His idea was, let's get that energy, let's get that Western political energy, and let's get a voice in Ottawa. Let's send our guys to Ottawa, and we can get some changes made, some constitutional changes, so that they have to listen to us. Like, if we got a Triple E Senate, a Senate that would be elected. We don't have an elected Senate right now, but a Senate that was elected with equal representation from each province and had effective powers, Western voices could be heard in the national government, and they wouldn't attack us the way they've been doing. So the West wants in. That was the thing to do, and the Reform Party was the right idea. And you know what we learned from that? Like, people like Art, they went down there, they worked really hard, they did the best they could, and what we learned was the East does not want us in. That's why that was such an important experiment. The Reform Party was the right thing to do for that time. And now we know the East does not want us in. If we want a voice, we have to be independent. We have to have our own country. So the perspective I represent, I believe we need an independence referendum, and we need to pass that referendum, and we need to become our own country, where we elect leaders to Edmonton who will make decisions on our behalf for our good because we put them there. Sorry. We send good people like Art to the House of Commons, but they're a small minority, and so they can be ignored. But if we have our own country, our representatives will not ignore what we have to, the people we vote for will not ignore what we want. So when we talk about different alternatives from Alberta, I know there's people who talk about, who favor the Sovereignty Act, let's just exercise our muscle within Canada, and there's nothing wrong with that as far as it goes, but that's not going to solve our problems, because that doesn't give us the power that we need to make the decisions we want for the future of our province. So here I am. I'm here because I want to argue to people, or convince people, that Alberta needs to become its own country. We need to be independent. Thank you.
I like him. I like him. We do too?
That's what we hear.
Absolutely. Now, if this is what happens, let's say you vote me in, and I have a seat, and then Alberta does this referendum, maybe in November, maybe sooner. We'll see. Jeffrey Rath is certainly working on it. And it comes back a yes. My mandate is to end my job. Imagine that. I got to go there and fight for the voice of Alberta so that my seat is no longer needed. And Alberta goes and does its own thing with whether it's a republic or a commonwealth or whatever the term is, it will be separate. Get the pension first. Get the money first. And that is a commitment I'll do. I'm not there for me or my pension and my future. I'm there to bring forward the voice of Alberta. So I couldn't be more pleased about that opportunity. Now, when I started my show, the purpose of my show is I wanted to be a crash course on being an MP. I called it an MP boot camp because that was my goal, was to be an MP, but I needed to be educated. I needed to learn the issues, talk to people, and you're not going to catch that on CBC, Global, CTV. I quite literally had to knock on doors and hit the emails and basically beg for my guests to come and join my show. I've now had over 600 interviews on my show, and this has allowed me to learn a lot. I've talked to people that call themselves refugees. These are people who left the left, so they consider themselves refugees. Political orphans. They don't know where to go anymore because nobody aligns with them anymore. And then superstars like Theo Fleury. When I reached out to him, it was, I think, through LinkedIn is how I connected with him the first time. And I was thrilled that he even responded, let alone come on the show. And I thought, awesome, I'm going to have Theo Fleury on. We're going to talk about, sports and some other things he's done, Olympic gold, skate around. Now, I'll admit, I was an Edmonton fan, Oilers, as a young guy, growing up in Saskatchewan. Even when I moved to the Toronto area, I still followed Edmonton. But I really thought I was going to have a conversation with Theo about sports and what it means to be a patriot in Canada and fight for Canada, like the Olympics. I was kind of surprised when the conversation went to trauma, talking about his work with trauma, adult trauma, and then he shared his story with us. And I was surprised to hear all those details. You don't catch this on CBC. They didn't do a Theo Fleury, the history of trauma, and have a conversation with him. So I learned a lot. And I was kind of taken aback that he was able to share that. And it really inspired me a lot. But what really shook my world was something I didn't expect to happen. Again, I thought it was going to be MP boot camp. I thought it was going to be about me learning. But I received a message shortly after his episode, a gentleman out in BC. And he said, I had watched your episode and I learned about Theo's story. And he said, me too. It happened to him. And then he shared with me that he ripped up his maid's application after watching that episode because he was ready to end his life. So Theo saved at least one life that day by coming on the show to share his story. And I know there's more that were watching that too and had similar results. And then he came to the NCI in Edmonton. You were there, I believe. And he shared the story there again too. And it reminded everybody, trauma in adults are real. And if we don't start to address that, we're going to continue to see what we got here. And I think his desire to fight that and make people aware of it and actually try and help is going to be the way we fix this. Because if people address their trauma, whatever it is, you can think clearer, you can be braver, you can be bolder, and you actually can go ahead and put your values forward and take those kind of steps. So Theo, brother, thank you so much for being here today. And I have no doubt you're going to absolutely love this man if you haven't met him before, and please go shake his hand.
All right. Yes, go Flames, go. This is the last place that I actually want to be in my life. I don't want to be doing this. I don't think I need to be doing this. I shouldn't be doing this. But obviously, there's a reason. There's a reason why. And, Jason covered it. And, what blows my mind is we have early voting going on right now. And we have people who are still voting for the three main parties. Conservative, NDP, Liberal. And these guys just finished committing genocide on the planet, and we're still voting for them. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Well, the reason why you're still voting for these people is because you haven't resolved your own personal trauma that you have. And it's as simple as that. And that's the reason why I'm here. Is for the last 20 years, I've studied human behavior because I have a story and a history of trauma, intense, crazy trauma. And when I got to the other side of trauma and started sharing my story and doing workshops and helping people with their own personal trauma issues, I realized that the biggest perpetrators of trauma on the planet are who? The government. The government. If you can't afford a healthy diet and lifestyle, that's trauma. If you can't afford to put gas in your car and go to work, that's trauma. So every single issue we have in society starts with unresolved trauma. Every single issue in society starts with unresolved trauma. And the unresolved trauma is you guys are still voting Liberal, Conservative, and NDP. That you're traumatized. You've fallen in love with your abuser. It's as simple as that. And, you know, when I saw COVID happen, I saw that they were manipulating, coercing, lying, cheating, stealing. And guess what my pedophile abuser used against me to get me to do what he wanted me to do? Manipulation, coercion, lying, stealing, cheating. Remarkable. That's who these people are, who are asking for your vote, are abusers. Classic abusers. And we are in a psychological and spiritual warfare, okay? And you know how I came to, because in 12-step, the first step is I am powerless and my life has become unmanageable. Okay? I am powerless and my life has become unmanageable. Well, you know what the third step is? Came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. So September 17th, 2005, I hit my knees in a washroom and I surrendered and I turned my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand him. And I haven't had a drink since then. So, because we're living in an insane world, how are we going to be restored back to sanity? God. Amen. That's it. That is the answer to this question. It's God. Get on your knees, pray, ask for help, ask for strength, and do not be afraid of cowards, because these guys are the biggest cowards in the world. And I made a career out of exposing cowards on the ice. Because as you can see, I'm not the biggest guy in the world, but 6'5" and 6'6" guys were scared of me. Why? Because they were cowards. Because I was willing to die in order to win, and I knew that they weren't. And because they weren't willing to go to the nth level to win, I own them. And that's the way we have to handle this situation right now. These people are cowards. Cowards. And I'm sick and tired of this bullshit. Amen. Truly. Because I ain't afraid of these guys. Because I've seen hundreds, thousands of these guys, played against them, you know? They're cowards. They're cowards. And so, like I said, I don't really want to be here. I don't want to be doing this. Look at it, it's nice outside. I love to play golf. I'd rather be outside golfing, you know, with my dad, my two boys, who we love to spend time together on the golf course. But, you know, this is, I think, the greatest time of our life, right here. And the biggest opportunity for change can happen now. And it has to happen now, because if it doesn't, we're all dead, because that's what they want. They want us all dead, right? So you have nothing to lose and everything to gain, right? Because I know if I leave this earth, I'm going to a way better place than it is right now, right? So don't be afraid. Absolutely don't be afraid. What I saw happen during the convoy was probably the greatest patriotic thing I've ever witnessed in my life, right? And you saw the biggest coward in the world, Justin Trudeau, run away when they got to Ottawa, right? He ran away. He ran away because he's a coward, right? But then they started arresting us and they started freezing our bank accounts, and we got shit scared. We got scared and we stopped talking. We stopped congregating. We stopped meeting with each other because we got scared, right? We got scared, right? We did because the movement is fractured. It's fractured, you know. Everybody's yelling at everybody and everybody's fighting with everybody, you know. The Liberals, they're united. It doesn't matter what goes on, they're united. That's why they did what they did, because they knew that we were going to fracture, right? Psychological and spiritual warfare, right? So the only way out of this, we got to unite. And that chain that we're going to create in this new movement has to be unbreakable. And no matter what they throw at you, because you're going to support this movement, you have to absolutely stand in your power, right? That's it. So I don't care what it looks like. At this point, I don't care what you call it. It doesn't matter, right? Doesn't matter. We have to unite as a conservative group of people, and then from there, unwavered, stay on the path to get to where we want to go, and that's freedom and sovereignty. That's where we're headed. That's where we need to get to. Because right now, we're not free, we're not sovereign. These guys think they got the upper hand, you know, but they don't, right? Because we're meeting and we're creating a new movement, a new action, a new way forward. So I'm just, you know, and you know what's funny is they tried to cancel me the whole entire time, and I'm still here. My accounts are still growing exponentially. Why? Because I'm not afraid of cowards, right? That's it. So where did Jason go? Oh, there he is right here. Okay, thank you for listening and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Theo. So we're now going to be courageous and have a conversation, and wherever this takes us, we're going to make sure that we include all of you. So if you're going to have some questions, get yourself ready near the end. We'll let you know when a mic is available to come up. But we're going to have a candid conversation, unscripted, and we're going to enjoy ourselves on this one. So hold on a second as we move the camera and have a seat, but we'll get yourself ready. All right, so thank you very much for this panel. Let's give them all a round. So I have a politician, a lawyer, a doctor, and a patriot. That's quite the combination, I think. And
Is there a joke coming?
a lawyer, doctor, politician, and patriot walk into a bar. We'll just start right there.
Just to be clear, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not a medical doctor.
But you're a doctor.
And I'm not actually a politician. I'm a reformer.
Yeah.
A reformer.
So-
There's a difference.
So we gave the mics to the wrong guys, is what I just learned there. But no, here's what we're trying to do is have a very diverse, not in the DEI type of sense, but a diverse type of voice here. And we're going to have a very candid conversation. Because I think already from what you heard in the introductions, there's different views. So we're talking about sovereignty and freedom here. We've got separation over there. We got independence over here. And we got a reformer who is frustrated because it didn't work out and he wants to see it happen again. And he's not on his rocking chair. He's actually doing something about it. So I'm very pleased to have them all here. My first question to you is, can Canada be fixed? Is there a way to fix Canada at this current stage, or is it beyond repair? Art, let's start with you, if you don't mind.
I would have to, from just my own experience over my lifetime, say no. I think there needs to be a major shakeup in the land, but I'm going to go and break it down even to a point where the only solution I see is independence for Alberta. And all you have to do is listen to the debates in the last election when the candidates were all spelling out what they were going to do and how they were going to go about doing it. And it's just Groundhog Day all over again from it was when the Reform Party was launched. We are not accepted in Eastern Canada as a political entity. We are strictly there for their benefit, for their opportunity to take our resources, take our efforts actually that were put into this province, and leave us on our own. We have no part in the system. We have none. So it can't be fixed. I see independence as the route, and I'm prepared to go there all the way.
I would concur with what Art has said. What we're seeing right now from a geopolitical situation is that we are becoming more and more part of the globalist machine, right? And so that doesn't work. It didn't work during COVID when we had people in Davos, Switzerland, with the World Health Organization making edicts about how other countries were going to implement a supposed pandemic response. Let's just be clear. That all of that COVID stuff was all bullshit. So that's my position on it. And but what we've seen is that, and why I'm in favor of an independent Alberta, strictly independent, not 51st state, not just completely independent, is because I see the bigger picture. And I think the way we fight this is decentralize power and authority and not increase it. And not play into what these globalist maniacs have in store for us. So the only way we are going to do this is if Alberta becomes an independent nation. And there are ways to do it, and the Clarity Act is part of it. But what I also don't want to see for Alberta is an independent nation with the same bullshit recreated, except for in Alberta. That's not what I'm looking for. And I'm looking for a complete overhaul of the system. And Alberta and Albertans have a unique culture, and we've always had a unique culture. And we're entrepreneurial, we're family first, we're hardworking, and we believe that, basically that anything is possible. Because when we put our minds to it, and because of our hard work ethic, anything is possible. We've created globally and in Canada, especially throughout the last few years, since 2015 especially, this victim mentality culture, right? Where everybody's feelings are hurt. And I want to get away from that. And I think that so I'm very, although I do want an independent Alberta, I think we really need to be careful about who is leading this movement to an independent Alberta. Because I don't want the status quo right now that we have here. And so this is a conversation that we're going to have over the next couple of years into the next provincial election as well. And I want to see a strong conservative party. I want to see strong conservative-minded candidates running in the next provincial election, because I want a complete overhaul for a new Alberta.
So Jason's question was, can Canada be fixed? And the subtitle of my most recent book is Canada Cannot Be Fixed. So that's my answer. Now,
Is that book back there as well for sale?
yeah, it's called the book title is Time to Leave, and the subtitle is Canada Cannot Be Fixed. And I just wrote that book last year. Now, the reason that I wrote that book was because I wrote a previous book called No Other Option, which advocates for Alberta independence. And people would read that book and go, yeah, I see the case for Alberta independence, but first we need to try and fix Canada. Let's try and fix Canada. And I was so frustrated. And I was on email list for groups that would say, oh, Alberta's getting a raw deal. Let's fix Canada. And the purpose of Time to Leave is to show we've been trying to fix Canada for 50 years. Like, it's not just the Reform Party. It was the Tripoli Senate idea, and there's others. We've been trying to fix Canada. Albertans, going back to the late 70s, have been trying to make Canada a more favorable country for Alberta, because most Albertans would prefer to fix Canada than leave. Most Albertans would prefer that because it just kind of makes sense. But we've been trying and we've been trying and we've been trying, and we've tried everything, like as far as I can tell politically that's realistic. We've tried it all. They don't want us. Let's get out.
Right.
You can't fix communism. Right? I don't know how many times it's been tried. And there's one thing very distinct of what communism spits out, and that's mass death. Murder. That's it. That's it. And that's the road we're headed down. I would say we have a communist takeover happening already in Canada. And so, yeah, that system can't be fixed. And we need a whole new entire system. And hopefully Alberta can lead the way in creating that new system for, the rest of Canada. Let's do it first, and then maybe we'll invite them back in, right? Maybe. Maybe, right?
He stole my next question. So if Alberta does make this move, do you think other provinces will follow? Saskatchewan, with Mo, has already said after this election they're going to look for a reform, do a referendum, and go ahead and maybe beat Alberta to the punch. But do you think if this actually happens and we see a yes vote, and it's a clear one, because the Clarity Act kind of requires a clear majority, and that's not just 50% plus one, it's going to maybe 60 or 65, it's not even defined, but we'll have to address that problem. If you have a member of the parliament that actually supports you, we'll be able to argue this a bit more. But at the end of the day, do you think other provinces might join along? You kind of alluded to that.
Well, I think the two provinces that probably have the most robust feeling for that is Alberta and Saskatchewan. So, and I don't know, was there 1 million people that moved from Saskatchewan when the NDP got elected in Saskatchewan? 1 million people moved to Alberta. So I would say, the NDP has always been a communist party from day one. And so why we ever elect that party, it's beyond my, but yeah, I think who knows? I don't know what will happen in Manitoba, but definitely Saskatchewan and Alberta probably have the most, excitement for that kind of vote.
They want freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, we're tired of this. And, I like to live in abundance. Okay. And I like to create abundance for myself. And all these guys do is sell scarcity, And in God's world, there is no scarcity. There's only abundance. And so, they use it as a, psychological tactic, to like, oh, there's not enough oil, right? There's too much carbon. There's too much, see how they use those words to create fear in people because we're so afraid that it's all going to go away or be taken away. But my experience has been, the more I manifest abundance, the more I create abundance, the more I think in an abundant way, the more I have. Like, and I'm not talking material wise, I'm talking about sanity, I'm talking about integrity, I'm talking about compassion, I'm talking about empathy, I'm talking about a relationship, you know, all that's the abundance that I manifest. And then when you have that, everything else takes care of itself, right? So
Right, take care of your own home, then you can help your neighbor. Absolutely. Yeah.
So the question is, would other provinces come with Alberta?
Do you believe other provinces may start or join us on that?
Like, of course, I don't know the future, but I think there's a certain degree of likelihood for Saskatchewan and maybe the others. Like the way it works with becoming independent, as you mentioned, the Clarity Act and also the Supreme Court's secession reference case that was the basis for the Clarity Act, is it has to be province by province that we become independent. So my ideal situation would be an independent Western Canada, like all the 4 Western provinces together. That's the ideal, but we can't do it all 4 together. It has to be one at a time, and Alberta has to be the first. Alberta is going to be the first. If Alberta goes independent and things go, well, the way it should, then there'll be people in Saskatchewan for sure who are going to consider that, and maybe Manitoba. I mean, the 3 Prairie provinces, like we share a kind of like a common culture. The 3 Prairie provinces, we share kind of a common history too. All 3 of the Prairie provinces were denied control of the natural resources until 1930. So, like the 3 Prairie provinces have a lot in common, and maybe certainly northern BC to a certain degree. But I would certainly like to see the 3 Prairie provinces at the very least be a country, and that would also give us a port in Churchill to get our ships out and stuff like that. So it's certainly possible, but it has to happen with one province first, and that has to be Alberta.
I really don't have too much more to add from that to that. I do believe other people will follow. And in fact, I mean, as Albertans, we really need to consider where our money is going and what it's being wasted on. And, part of, I think, for what Canadians need to recognize as well, and Albertans, is that we need to stop funding the abuse, right? We need to stop funding Ottawa's absolute neglect and abuse towards Albertans and others. And so I think by Alberta being the first to leave, we will actually save Canada in the process, because we will cut off the gravy train that has allowed Canada to exist up until this point and has perpetuated these sorts of socialist totalitarian regime ideas that have basically crippled not just Alberta, but all of Canada as well.
Some time ago, I know there was a study about, just where one could draw border lines and form a new Western bloc, if you will. After all, borders are just imaginary lines. They're not really fixed. Only in our own minds we know what the shape of Alberta looks like, and Saskatchewan, Manitoba. But ultimately, when you look at Europe, they've been changing borders there on a regular basis. Now, that study sort of reflected what happened with the Reform Party when in 1993 we swept the Western Bloc. We had captured four provinces, and the only holdout out of the 4 was the Lower Mainland in British Columbia. And when you look at how woke and out of touch they are with reality, they would probably fit better if they went to the state of Washington or even joined California. But the Western provinces have really spoken on several occasions about just how feasible this is. They all have the same desire. The people have the same desire. They want freedom, and they want Ottawa off their back. And I think it's feasible. I think it's but Alberta, you're right about this, Doctor, is that Alberta has to lead the pack. The others are not going to lead. It's going to be Alberta.
So we don't trust polls a lot, but I did my own. And 4.2% of Albertans want no change. 43% favor independence. 34.8% would like to join the United States, while only 16.7% support sovereignty. So if you put those numbers together, we have a strong independent movements. If you're going to be a state, you got to get divorced first before you get into another marriage, right? So if you look at this, 95% of Albertans want change. There's no way we can keep doing this. Does that inspire you, Art, that we actually might be at that cusp right now? There might be a perfect storm at this stage to actually get this done.
Well, I'm going to go back over my experience when the Reform Party again, because we caught a wave of dissatisfaction. You know, the federal government had come in, the National Energy Program had devastated the province. Alberta was the worst, then Saskatchewan. And there was a hunger for something just to happen. And it never happened with the Conservative Party. People had a high expectation that they were going to turn this around, and they never did. You know, they continued the same programs, and the suffering continued on in the West. So those numbers are very indicative of really what was happening a few years back. You know, let's capture that, is what I say. Let's capture that wave of dissatisfaction and turn it into a very positive force that's going to bring first Alberta and then the other provinces together. It's very doable, and I think that the society is ready for it.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, I think Albertans are ready for it. I mean, I've only been in this realm of separatism for 5 years now or so, and it's increased exponentially. I want to remind people, though, of we can do it, and we can do it if we come together. But I really liked what Theo said in his introduction about how we're going to be doing this and why we are still continuing to vote for people who are abusing us. And I think this is a bigger conversation that Albertans need to have, because it doesn't seem obvious on the face of it. And we, I think, as people tend to, what's the word? We tend to think that a person or those parties couldn't have nefarious agendas because I'm a good person, and therefore I wouldn't do that, and therefore they're not going to do that. And we assume that the people who are bold-faced lying to us actually are good people. And I think, so in this opportunity, in this amazing opportunity that we have, this resurgence of common sense that we are seeing being restored in Alberta, that we are very careful about who and what we have representing and leading us down this path of independence. And I'm going to continue to harp on this probably until the day the referendum comes, because I really believe that we need to create, and we have an opportunity right now, given all of these different factors that are at play right now. They're coming, they're colliding, they're coalescing, and we have an opportunity to really make something great within Alberta. And I think so we should, I just caution people, because I know that we have a great opportunity in front of us, and I don't want to see it squandered by putting it into the wrong hands of people who are not for separation. They're not for independence. And that would include the current UCP party and the current NDP party that's running Alberta. Yeah. We have to be very careful about that, because just imagine how negotiations are going to go unless you firmly believe in independence in your bones. Unless you firmly believe in that, the likelihood that you or somebody will capitulate or compromise is very high. And we've had decades and decades of compromise. Compromise to the point where we no longer have a what I would call a party or a government that actually represents Alberta's heritage and what it is that founded this province, that is the anchor, that is the glue that we require to be maintained for us to be able to flourish in the future as a cohesive province. We don't have that any longer, and it's time that we recognize those influences in our everyday life so that we don't repeat the same mistakes in this opportunity that we have.
So are you optimistic with these numbers?
Yeah, like actually when you look at the history of polling in terms of support for Alberta independence, it generally has been growing over time. Like in the 1970s, when Pierre Trudeau first started attacking Alberta, like I guess I won't get into details. You might remember Peter Lougheed, our premier, was fighting with Trudeau because Trudeau was taking our money for oil that we should have been getting. So back in those days in the 70s, support for independence was like single digits. So when they do polling, it'd be like 5, 6, 7%. What changed, though, was the National Energy Program in 1980. That when Trudeau launched that degree of attack against Alberta, and that's what it was. It was an attack on our oil industry, an attack on our province. From that point forward, polling on support for independence has usually been double-digit, or at, back in those days, it'd be like 15, 18%. Then it'll get up into the 20%. Sometimes we're seeing 30% or more for independence. So it's gradually growing because the idea gets more credibility over time. In the 70s, it didn't have credibility, but it's getting more and more credibility. And, Art talked about the wave and how the Reform Party, became successful on the basis of a wave of Western frustration with Central Canada. We're about to face another wave of Western alienation on April 29th, when Mark Carney, everybody realizes that Mark Carney has become Prime Minister because that's the way the polling is going. If he becomes Prime Minister, if he's elected on April 28th, beginning April 29th, there's going to be a huge wave of support for Alberta independence that's going to make those numbers look small that Jason has. Anyway, so I'm optimistic, and that's when the work really begins and we can make the changes that we want.
So why aren't we voting on April 29th then?
We might be.
You mentioned something really interesting is I look at politicians now like addicts and alcoholics, okay? Hurt people, okay? Hurt people. And so everybody needs a coping mechanism for their traumatic experiences, okay? And for me, when I look at politicians, their coping mechanisms is their addiction is power, okay? And I believe that is the worst addiction in the world to have, is because when you have power, what do? You abuse people, right? And so Catherine's right that when this does happen, that anybody who's around now cannot be here when this takes place. Like, you got to clean the whole house, right? And then put those people into treatment and get them well, okay?
Exactly.
Yeah. That leads me to my next question. So Danielle Smith has clearly saw something happen. She's gotten a lot of people reaching out to her. Jeffrey Rath is one who did an open letter to Danielle Smith, basically challenging her to come up with 5 reasons why we shouldn't do something like this. Why would we be more prosperous in Canada as is? No response. But no. Shocker. No. That first one's probably tough. It's probably really tough. But she also went on and mentioned on her show that she's going to set up a What's Next panel, is what she calls it. All right? Another panel. Maybe we should have a panel for panels.
Another delay.
Did you get invited?
So I did reach out to her about that, and I said, I'd be willing to help. Let's see what we can do with that. And her response was, let's talk April 29th. So clearly she's waiting for the result of the election for that panel. Now, my next question to this panel, who's very active, is this a delay tactic or a step in the right direction? I know what Catherine's going to say.
Like, I so badly want to like Danielle Smith. You know what I mean? But she'll do something that's really cool and great, and then the next day she'll do something completely stupid. You know what I mean? So in this day and age, like, you're either all in or you're all out, right? There's no more, like, there's no more gray area. Like, we are headed towards global communist, Marxist, dictatorship, authoritarianism. That's where we're headed. So you're either for that or you're against it. There is no, you cannot wade around in the kiddie pool and, sometimes go in, sometimes go out. You're either all in or you're all out, right? And that's the marketing part of this whole movement that has to happen. You're either all in with the status quo, which means you want to be governed and told what to do, when to do it, how to do it, whatever, or you want freedom and full-on sovereignty with tiny government.
No, I think Lyndsay Butler was clear. We want freedom. There's no partial freedom, freedom light, or anything like that.
No.
Like, I can't top that. I'm just going to pass.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Theo, you've very nicely captured how I've been feeling for a very long time. And there's a bifurcation happening in society right now, and it's values and moral based, and we're seeing it tested all the time. We see it in our schools with sexual orientation, gender identity being taught. My grade 7-year-old son, who's in grade 7, is having these health classes with gender identity discussions, and I'm having this conversation with my teacher. And the option that Danielle Smith gave parents like me was to remove my child from that class. Well, you know what that does to my son? It ostracizes him. And so then he's put in a very difficult position explaining to his peers why his mom is not allowing him while he's sitting out in the hallway reading a book, which was what the suggestion of the school teacher was. And I said, no. So I got the lesson plan, talked to my son's father. We're on the same page. And so we let him take this instruction, knowing that we will have the conversation when we get home to explain to my son why this is insanity that is happening right now, because there are only two sexes, and it only took how long for the UK Supreme Court to come out with that ruling recently. Okay? So this is the kind of stuff where this bifurcation is becoming very obvious. And the Alberta that I want doesn't resemble what we have right now. It's not going to be compromised if I have any say in it. It's not going to be compromised to the point where we are so confused that we don't know which sex somebody is based on biology. That is going to govern our policies and lawmaking in this province. And I believe we have an amazing opportunity to start empowering people to take personal responsibility back in their lives. We have an opportunity to be a government that empowers keeping families together. I'm also in recovery. I haven't had a drink in 15 years. I went through the program as well. And I learned a lot from that program. And another thing that's happening with the Smith government is forced treatment right now. We're going to give the government yet another opportunity to force us to do something. And instead of forcing people into treatment, which is a disaster of an idea, it rarely will work and will rarely lead to long-term sobriety, and it puts all the control back into the government's hands. All of the control. Instead, what I believe would work in that instance is if you have policies that are about connecting people, like connection and purpose, people aren't aren't likely to turn to addiction. And this is kind of what Theo was talking about earlier today with trauma. You know, if we were a society that was living in abundance, which an independent Alberta would provide for us, because income taxes slashed, done. Equalization, done, right? We're going to be a province or a country where we have an insane amount of abundance available to us so that we can promote actual policies for people to help them. When people can't put gas in their car, can't put food on their table, can't pay their credit cards, and are being told by the government what to do, this leads to distress. And this is why people turn to things like addiction. Yes, we have a huge fentanyl problem that's happening right now, but the government caused it in many instances. And so we're seeing this reporting coming out by Sam Cooper, linking the federal Liberal Party and the Conservative Party federally to this fentanyl drug trade that is sweeping the nation. And so we have an opportunity that we can have a system with principled people in place who are about actually holding people accountable, holding the politicians accountable for actually creating the circumstances that they then implement laws to try to fix that they've actually created. We're done with that. We want a new system, and we want people leading this new Alberta that actually have the ability to do that.
I think there's still some room in there for me to say something. What was the question again there?
Whether Danielle Smith's panel is a delay tactic or something that is going to lead us forward.
Well, I think if you look at her track record, it's delay. And, you know, I was thinking the other day, and this is after I read some information, it might have been even one of Dr. Wagner's books, but do you know what the highest level of government is in our country? The family. Look at it. The family is the highest level. And what has been under attack over this, especially these last 20, 30 years, 40 years, it's the family. Everything that is being foisted upon the people, you know, the parents, our struggling working class, if you want to call them that, is to undermine that very basic, fundamental government system. You know, the raising of our kids. You know, the government's in there. You know, daycare. You have to get out there and work. You know, this is the top priority. But the family has been undermined, and you know, I guess I can look at my own shortcomings and say, well, I've contributed some of that too. You know, and even as I have raised my family, I'm not a perfect individual, and I made my mistakes. But it's interesting how the family still comes together when they have to, if there's fundamental teaching there. And the government hates that. They want to indoctrinate our children in the schools with a foreign kind of thinking that is not moral, and it's destructive. It's destructive for their futures, and it's most of all it's destructive for our government, because if you undermine the fundamental government, which is our family, you've destroyed everything else, and then you have nothing but what? A dictator running the show and telling us what we can do and what we cannot do. So I see this, you know, as part of Smith's track record. Nothing is happening that is beneficial to our family. I don't care what her words are. The school system is under siege in a big way. The court system is literally collapsed. You can't trust what is going to happen there. You have legislation that has come down the pike, you know, that is supposed to protect our fundamental rights, which you can look at the Alberta Bill of Rights and say, well, that sounds good, But, it's always got some twist or turn in it that makes it not even worth the paper it's written on. Just like our Constitution in the country. It's broken. It's broken, and they don't intend on fixing it. And why would they if they're going to control what's going to happen here in Alberta? So I'm very much concerned over the fact that anything put into the hands of a Smith government, the Conservative government in this province, is going to end up a disaster. Even the referendum, when you sit back and think about it, the referendum in the hands of the Smith government, it won't turn out the way we expect, or probably it would be undermined even before we get there. So, I really appreciate Catherine's cautionary words, because there are so many bad actors in this business right now, even amongst the Freedom Group. You don't know which side they're on. There's no time for us to go running back and playing in the Smith government sandbox. What good does that do? Why are we there? Why are so many of the Freedom people there? It's a dead end, and it's becoming more and more obvious as she comes out and makes statements, thinking that this is going to cover the base off and satisfy the electorate. But that's what she's doing, and I see nothing but a further breakdown. And we can't wait too much longer if we keep tolerating that kind of messaging coming out of our government. We have to step up and push back, and then finally, I'd like to see that vote, all right, because it'll be a glorious day to say freedom. Freedom reigns here in this province of Alberta, and I think that's possible if we use the very cautionary words that Katherine has explained, but catch that wave at the same time.
Yeah. Who knows? The first president of Alberta might be in this room right now. Who knows? President Fleury sounds pretty nice. Art. So we have all these groups: APP, Take Back Alberta, 1905, Alberta Republican Party, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and freedom groups all over the place too in Alberta. One question that we had at the Jeffrey Rath show I had the same thing there with Chris Scott, and we had a long conversation. One of the audience members was concerned that there's going to be so much fracturing with all these groups because they want to do it their way, and everybody has their own idea. Is there a way to get them all together on this particular one? What do you think, Al? Or Art, sorry.
Yeah. Well, that's a very good question, because that's exactly what we see. We've seen this. Eric Lowther and I have conducted a number of meetings with that intent. Building a network of networks, is how we looked at it. And we've realized that as we put all these groups together, it's in the hundreds. There's literally, maybe it's just a few podcasters, or maybe it's a group of people that have an organization, but it's something like over 200. And how do you bring all these single-minded people together? They've all got their agendas, and they're good at what they do. I don't care which group you look at. I mean, if they're going to go out there and attack the policies that are coming out of the Smith government in impacting school, they're out there and they're good. They know their stuff, and they have a following. I asked one gentleman that had a podcast, and he's very active in the community. He's on school choice, and it's interesting. I said, "What's your following on your podcast?" And he said, "Oh, probably tie in around 40,000 people." And I said, "Well, that's pretty impressive." I said, "Now, if you were asked all those people to come out as boots on the ground, and they were going to participate in a major initiative that you want to accomplish, how many do you think you would get?" So he's thinking for a while. 200. So we've got a lot of armchair critics and supporters out there. Not to say that that's bad, but it's not motivating them to get actively involved. And it's probably scary for some. Some of the first meetings I ever went to was Katherine spoke, Dr. Hodgkinson spoke, and that was a fascinating time for me. It was not my first rally, but it was there because I was motivated to hear what Dr. Hodgkinson had to say, as well as Katherine. And that was when Chris Scott was arrested that day up there in Mirror. Now, it was a good turnout, but I was up front there with them when they were speaking, and I was also out at the back there watching the RCMP perform what they had purposely come out to do, and that was arrest him, one guy, maybe two, one guy. And anyways, I'm wondering. I kept wondering, why are they just targeting him? There's other people here that are running, they're speaking, they're making a lot of noise, but why just him? So they had that in mind. They wanted to get the leaders out of the way, and they wanted to send a clear message. I even imposed myself in places I know I wasn't welcome, and they totally ignored me. And the media were on their side right away. And they nodded to the media when it was time to turn the cameras on, and then they went ahead and performed what they were going to do. They wanted that to happen. So this stuff, to me, as Theo has pointed out, what is it more like? I read stories like that about what happened in communist country. That's how they treated their people. The ones that protested, the ones that stood up against the system, the ones that were seeking justice and freedom. So I see that as what we're facing here, and that's why, in my mind, I have come to the strong conclusion that independence is the only answer. We can't fix that mess that's in there. It's too corrupt. It's too intertwined with too many agendas floating around about a healthcare. I mean, what are these corporations these government corporations that they're establishing? Why have them? Because they can hide everything from the public. That's the only thing that I can see is the purpose of them. And they have to be dismantled. This government's not going to dismantle them. They're not going to do it.
So, Jason, you listed a number of groups there. TBA, Take Back Alberta, 1905, APP, the Alberta Prosperity Project.
I didn't have the list of 200. So
Yeah. Well, there's lots of them, but those come to mind in terms of, that have captured not only the headlines, but have been actively involved over the past couple of years. But those are groups. And those groups are designed to educate in part, and they're also third-party advertisers who clearly have an agenda that they would like to push. Now, not all of them are independence-minded, but if you, in your heart, you want an independence Alberta, you need to you need to vote for an independence party. Now, there's many parties currently available for Albertans to consider right now: the Independence Party, Wildrose Loyalty Coalition, I think Alberta Advantage. There's also a new party that's on the horizon, that's coming up on the horizon, called the Republican Party of Alberta. And I envision what's going to happen with those parties is that they are going to be coming together because they recognize the importance of coming together and uniting for this one purpose. And so while the groups continue to educate and have their own messaging, the only way I believe a successful referendum is going to happen is if you actually vote for a party that believes in independence. Right now, the current governing parties, the so-called opposition and the governing party, the UCP right now, they are federalist parties. They do not want independence. And what we have seen for so long within the UCP party is a base that is being convinced that reforming the UCP is possible. Oh, we'll just change the leader. We'll give them an ultimatum. We'll change the leader. And then you have the same old baggage undermining this movement, because what really controls, in my opinion, the UCP party right now and the Smith government is the globalist federal conservatives that are so entwined, and we can see this with Smith's recent appointment of Stephen Harper into AIMCO. We can see the tentacles of the globalist federal conservative party within the UCP party. And so if you think that you're going to get a positive result in an independence referendum with a federalist party within the province of Alberta, I think you're wrong.
Sorry.
In any of your books about unifying the groups together for one common goal?
Like, not in that sense, but there is something I think that could unify them. And I think they could be unified if we had the right leader come forward. Now, what I mean by that is when you look at Alberta's history, it's usually, and actually in other communities as well, it's when a particular kind of leader comes forward and draws people together. Like when you, in the 1930s, we had the Depression, and this radio preacher named Bible Bill Aberhart created the Social Credit Party. It was created in 1934. In 1935, it became a massive majority government. Then in 1965, the Progressive Conservative Party of Alberta had 0 seats in the legislature, and a new guy became leader, Peter Lougheed. 6 years later, he formed a new government of Alberta that lasted for over 40 years. Because there was something different. I can't explain how these people are able to do this, but sometimes you have special leaders come forward who can do things because people look to leaders. Like, it's not the issues that unite people so much, it's the leader. People unite behind a leader that they see who can make changes. And even, in the early 90s, it looked like the Progressive Conservative Party under Don Getty was going to lose to Lawrence Decore in the election. And then a new guy called Ralph Klein came forward and led the Progressive Conservative Party to new heights. They call it the miracle on the prairies. So I don't think somebody else besides Ralph Klein could have done that. I don't think somebody else besides Peter Lougheed could have built the Progressive Conservative Party from 0 to government in 6 years. So sometimes we just need a particular leader. In fact, now that I think about it, if you look at the history of the Alberta independence movement, in 1980, when the movement really took off because of the National Energy Program, there were quotes in Maclean magazine and politicians saying, if this separatist movement gets a real leader, we're going to watch out. Something's going to happen. You can have those quotes throughout, in the historical context, because you've got the sentiment. Albertans want change. Many of us want independence, and we've got these divisive groups. I mean, I know a lot of people in these groups, and they're good people. They want to do what's right. They're trying to do what's right. So it's not like there's some kind of maliciousness amongst them or anything like that. It's just that, different people have different kind of ways of achieving what their goals, and it's hard for them to work together. But if a particular kind of leader, like a real leader, came forward who said, okay, now Alberta needs to move to independence, I think a lot of the groups could unite together behind someone. Actually, this is what happened in Quebec. There was sentiment for Quebec independence in the 1960s, and then a man named René Lévesque, he had been a cabinet minister in the Quebec Liberal government, he decided he was fed up with Canada. He became a separatist, and when he declared himself for separatism and formed his party, all of the little independence groups came together behind him, and he became premier, because that's what it takes. Someone with prominence, someone who's respected in the community and has a profile, who comes and says, okay, this is what we need to do, and people will fall in behind. So I think that's what's needed for these different groups to come together in unity.
Right. Stop all these stupid squabblings amongst the leadership in these different groups, and band together and focus on the goal at hand. The goal is secession. We can work out our problems afterwards.
We may have a leader right there. Go ahead, Theo.
Well, in a spiritual war, you need a spiritual movement. Okay? And what derails spiritual movements is ego, edging God out. Edging God out. And, I've played on a few championship teams in my day, a few. The teams that were successful were the teams that had no egos. The teams that didn't have success, had too many egos, and ego is like a cancer. And that's what I saw happen in the convoy movement, was the ego took over from the spiritual. And when that happens, exactly what you explained, people are fighting with each other because
the Independence Party movement for the last 30 years,
right,
we've been trying to organize. Mm-hmm. This is what destroys it.
Absolutely, 100%. I've seen it 1,000 times, right? And, you know, being a leader, I was the guy who had to go into the general manager and say, you need to trade this guy because he's a cancer. You got to get rid of him. You know what I mean? And so, and I'm not a religious person by any way, shape, or form. So when I speak about God, my God is completely different than yours. And I don't care if you follow my God or not. It doesn't matter. All I'm saying is you got to believe in something greater than yourself. Because came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. We are living in an insane world. And collectively, if we start a spiritual movement, the leader will come out of that movement. Like, you won't even have to select them, they'll just come out. Right? That's how this whole thing works. You know? And yeah, so a spiritual war needs a spiritual movement. And until we get to the spiritual movement, we are going absolutely nowhere fast, because as we're seeing yesterday, people still voted for Progressive Conservative Party. People are still voting for Liberal Party. People are still voting for NDP. And they killed people on this planet. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You've fallen in love with your abuser because you refuse to heal yourself. You refuse to heal yourself. And you want to be a victim. And until that changes, we can meet till we're blue in the face. But each and every one of us individually has to make that commitment. And if you don't make that commitment, we are doomed as a race. It's over. They will win. They will win.
Yeah.
Donald Trump. He may have opened a door for everybody by talking about the 51st state, the governor, Trudeau, etc. There's a lot of people who got behind that pretty quick and said, let's go ahead and do that. Can we do that like today? But what all those people need to understand is you're for independence then, because we have to divorce first before we can do that. So do you think Trump's ambition is to have a new state, join them? Or is it to kind of push us out of the nest finally and tell us, you need to be independent. You need to make these conversations happen so that maybe you can do your own thing like trade through Montana and go ahead and bring your energy to the world markets. So we'll start with Theo. And by the way, maybe our next leader doesn't have to walk on water, but maybe skates on ice.
Yeah. You know, how I see Trump is, Donald, you have enough problems in your own country. Stay the F out of our business. We all got problems. We all got issues. We don't need that kind of negativity in our country at this time when we're going through what we're going through. And for him to endorse Carney is absolutely insane. Insane. And I'm a Trump supporter. I'm a Trump supporter. But when you do that kind of stuff, you're not a leader. You're full of ego, and God is not running your show when you do stuff like that. Right? And so I don't, he made all these promises. I don't see them coming to fruition. Nobody's been arrested. Nobody's, you know what I mean? So like you're
Red food dyes.
Right. So you're the last guy who should be talking about anything to do with Canada because you opened your big mouth and made a whole bunch of promises that we're not seeing anything happening. So what does that tell me? Ego. Ego.
Comes back to the ego.
Ego.
I just want to talk first. I just want to mention, like, I do not support the 51st state idea myself. I think our problem within Canada is we're small and ignored by Ottawa. If we join the United States, we'll be small and ignored by Washington. We're going to be in the same position, just in a different country. So I don't support the 51st state. But just like what Trump has done that is positive from an independence perspective is, like, if Alberta holds the independence referendum, one of the most important aspects of being recognized as a independent country is like international recognition. And I think that Donald Trump would be more likely to recognize us as an independent country than perhaps some other leaders might have been. So having him as president is partly like a window of opportunity for us to hold our referendum now and to get recognized by the United States.
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Wagner about that. I think we have. For me, I don't want to be short-sighted about the obvious benefits of what being an independent Alberta brings, which can be the same as potentially the 51st state, like lower taxes, for instance, a better constitution. But we can create all of that within Alberta for ourselves. And I guess I just want to remind people of my earlier comments about really what is the geopolitical goal on this planet? It's to consolidate power. It's for one world government, one world religion, one world economy, and the center of that is not North America, but North America will be, and the plan is to form a region and regions on the globe to facilitate this agenda. And it's not about families first, it's about the globalists first, and it's about how much pain will we suffer under the plan that they are currently unveiling and unfolding with little resistance by the people. I mean, we have a government here that supports net zero and carbon capture in Alberta. Like, I don't understand the insanity around this. So I agree with Theo, not helpful in terms of steering the conversation in Canada. It's not going to fix anything in Canada, but it did light a fire for Alberta independence, that in addition to everything else that our politicians are doing. But let's not be short-sighted, and let's not lose the opportunity to make Alberta truly independent and great without all the baggage that the U.S. government brings, the federal U.S. government brings to the situation. And all we have to do is look at various states currently, right now, including Texas, that have their own independence movements because they are very sorry that they joined the U.S. and there's a massive movement right now in many states to leave that republic. So let's just be careful about what we wish for.
Yes, I was quite actually pleased that Trump did what he did, because it revealed something about Canada. And the first reaction, from our political class was just bad man. Orange man is bad. So he's the guy you don't want to associate with. We don't want him to have anything to do with our country, our culture. But what actually it revealed in my mind was that we weren't looking after our fence. We weren't looking after our backyard. Our military is in shambles. I mean, now they made a proclamation. Our government did, that if you've got illness, you're on medication, we'll still take you into the army. We'll still take you into our military. What kind of nonsense is that? And Trump sees this stuff, and he must wonder, as do the military south of the border, what can we do to be part of a coalition? We can't do anything. We're too weak. We haven't even built. I think we built one ship in the last 10 years, 15 years. And we have more coastline than most countries ever do, and they got far more ships and destroyers, and we will take years to build up. So, to me, it was like a shot across the bow. Clean up your act, but we're not going to tolerate you becoming a communist country either. In a way, I think that could be a deeper message and maybe arguable, but. We never looked after our military, so we depend solely on the American. And we haven't looked after our own security. Our policing, our national security is in shambles. I just read a short time ago, it was put out by one of our generals in our military, that they've done a covert operation on the people of Canada to monitor their reaction over the COVID mandates that were placed down on the people. They wanted to know on a psychological basis how this was all playing out. Now, why would they want to do that, to our own citizens? Yeah, for the next one. This is a plan. The military is now completely in the pocket of the political class, as is our National Police Force, our RCMP. So they both have been given the status of, what is that now? As far as a bureaucrat, they're the top bureaucrats, so they're all political now. The Chief of Defense Forces, which is the general in charge, and the commissioner of the RCMP. So they are both part of the political class now. And who do they answer to then? Are they answering to the Constitution and to protect the country, or are they answering to their political masters? So I think Trump, in a way, kind of revealed a lot of that. The shortcomings of our country. We can't even look after ourselves, and they may have taken an initiative to cut the flow of immigration in their country, but have we? We are going through the same crises. That's why we have a housing crisis. There's unchecked, untested immigrants coming in. I'm going to say illegals, because that's what they are, and nobody is checking that. Not a word out of our premier. The immigration is a combination of both federal and provincial agreement, and we're taking them in here, and they want to build up our immigration to a point of where? Until it's doubled, our population is doubled in the next 15 years.
She said
100 million.
Sure. So what is that going to do to our culture here? This is a plan that goes far deeper. It goes far deeper than what the immediate you might look at. They want to change the whole fundamental basis of our cultural, and Alberta does have its own culture, by the way. In spite of what the feds might want to tell you. So all of these things are playing out, and I think a lot of this is being revealed just because Trump did what he did. I don't necessarily agree, but I don't disagree with what he did. I think it's a good thing, actually, because if it means that we're going to start looking inward and start fixing the problems that we have, then it's a good thing. But I don't think that's going to happen in Ottawa.
So several weeks back, Danny Rancourt was at the Injection of Truth 2, and he provided a presentation where he was providing numbers of excess mortality. And what he was able to show was when Alberta has economic troubles, like oil prices go down, the death of our young, specifically young men, go up. And what Mark Carney said when he was doing the leadership thing was, well, we got to fight Trump. We got to go and attack and do this tariff thing. But it was also very clear to the rest of Canada that Alberta is going to need help because they're going to be the ones that suffers the most. So he literally is telling you, if you put those two things together, he's going to kill our young men because he's going to create economic hardship here. And it's been very clear with Denny Rancourt's analysis over decades, whenever we have an economic downfall in Alberta, the rates of suicide, drug abuse, drug death, and other death goes up. So he's looking to Alberta and saying, we're going to kill your young people. Now, do you think we need to suffer a little bit more to get out of this? Is that going to wake people up? Or are we now at the stage, Art, that we can actually take this bull by the horns, because we have a culture here in Alberta of doing the hard jobs, the dirty jobs. Is it time for us to now make this happen and save our young people?
Well, that's a real good question, because I, living in an urban center, and I'm very familiar with the rural as well, but living in an urban center, I see vast changes in our neighborhood. They are not embracing what we have, as Albertans. The struggles that our parents, our grandparents went through to build the province. There's a whole new attitude out there, and
Northeast Calgary, Little India.
well, that was my riding for 15 years, and I can tell you a story or two about the battles that I had there. But you're right. The businesses that were in that area that were owned by different cultural groups, whether it's an Italian supermarket or whatever you want to look at, they're all bought out now by East Indians, and so the names will remain the same for the time being, and that's how it goes. But the face of the communities are changing dramatically. You can look out your window and you can see it. There's protests by the Islamics, not so much in Calgary yet, but they've been there. But there's some huge cultural centers. So one of them over $50 million, in a Islamic center. So all of these things are starting to play out on the street. There's a frustration with people that have been here. Even some of the earlier immigrants, say 50 years ago, they see this change themselves, and they're not comfortable with them. It's happening too fast. It's deliberate. It's happening too fast. So, I was at one of the restaurants there, Angel's Cafe, and I don't know if anybody's been over to Angel's Cafe. Anyway, she told me a story which sticks in my mind, because I think it just tells you what the broader story is, and that is, she was running her restaurant down there by the river, and she was noticing that there seemed to be a lot more homeless people around, and so she's engaged in a conversation with some of them, and she would always supply whatever was left over in her restaurant and give it to them because it's homeless, and or they were maybe had homes, but they were on the edge of poverty. And so she made that a practice. But the numbers started growing and growing. And so she was talking to one of them, and he said, well, we're all living down there in the bush. So she said, I reluctantly went down there to see what was happening. And the interesting part of it was that all of these people that were living on the river did have a home at one time, until the federal government decided they were going to get involved in housing. And who did they want the housing for, and why? So they were going after the tenants and the tenement owners and landlords, and said, look, you've got suites here. We'll give you, I think it was about $1,500 or so, $1,200 more per month if you put our refugees in there, or our immigrants, or our illegals in there. So they kicked them all out. They're out on the wandering around on the road, and they've installed and paid for the newcomers, the illegals, above our own citizens. So this is what's going on. So how is this going to be fixed? How is this going to be addressed? The only way, if we keep allowing this to happen, and Smith can control it because she has some say in immigration, she's not making any fuss about it. She wants to help develop even a greater stream, and then we're going to end up with a very, very different cultural group, and maybe even a lot of squabbling in between them. So this is where we're going, and I mean I can't see any other action but to separate and create an independent province and clean that bloody mess out of there. We got to break these ties.
So with the threat of, so Canada is a member nation to the United Nations. Stephen Harper signed us on to the international health regulations. We have Trudeau's government that ratified the Paris Climate Accords. We have a situation where in the quest to achieve Agenda 2030 at an accelerated rate, which just was ratified last September. A vote was taken by all member nations of the United Nations called the Pact that they were going to do whatever they could to accelerate the agenda. That's 2030. So the goal, whether you want to admit it or not, is to eliminate the middle class, which is all of you and me and who's sitting up here right now. So this is actually all, in my opinion, by design. There's the magic behind it is trying to convince people that they're doing it for our safety, right? That's why, the carbon capture program, which is ridiculous, is actually building the social credit structure that's going to control us, like is happening right now in China, which is a communist country. So they've convinced Canadians of this idea that carbon is a pollutant that is destroying our world, right, our country, and they've created an entire commodity out of nothing, and we've let them do so, okay? And these metrics that this Make Work project that all of these companies have signed on to, these oil and gas companies that are on the take on the other side, what they've done, they're going to have all these metrics that are going to form the basis of determining your carbon credit score. I mean, connecting the dots is part of the nuance of being a conspiracy theorist, right? And but we have to start looking at the reality for what it is, right? We have to start realizing what it is our governments are doing to us. And unfortunately, we've had decades of this indoctrination in understanding that we derive our power and our authority and our freedom from our governments, which is the exact complete opposite of where we do derive it from, which is God. We have these inherent natural laws that govern humanity, and not, bankers like Mark Carney. So this is where we're going, and until the Canadian population and Albertans wake up, we will suffer more pain. And Theo knows a saying in the rooms: pain is the touchstone for change. People typically won't make any major changes until they're so uncomfortable that they're forced to. But they also, another concept in the rooms of recovery is this notion that we don't have to go all the way to the bottom to get better. We don't have to hit rock bottom. And I think, the people that I've interacted with, Theo, all the panelists here, Jason, part of what we've been trying to do is have these conversations so that we can prevent rock bottom from happening. But we can't do it alone. And so I don't know what it will take for people to stop living in fear around it. But we have to find that faith that we as individuals, we are control of ourselves as individuals, our families first, and that our governments are not going to resolve this for us, right? We have to take back the power for ourselves, and we have to recognize who the real enemy is. And it's not our neighbors, and it's not our family, but it is the government, and we need that to stop.
Yeah, so Katherine said something along the lines of, people need to feel a certain degree of pain to be willing to change. That just reminded me of my favorite quote from, I mentioned Premier Bible Eberhard. He was talking about the need for change, and his favorite quote was, "If you haven't suffered enough, it's your God-given right to suffer some more."
And then I'll just say, you're only as sick as your secrets. You're only as sick as your secrets. So, and guess what? I was holding on for a secret for a long time, and I was sick physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And we have so many secrets. The government has so many secrets. Why do you think we're sick? Because of those secrets, right? And slowly but surely, these secrets are starting to come out. But unfortunately, the people who are asleep don't believe the secrets that are coming out. So
there's a couple quotes, and this will be my last question for the panel, and then you guys can go ahead and step up by the purple lady here. We love your colors. And we'll go ahead and get some more questions for you. But let's go and remind you of a couple other quotes. Hi, I'm from the government. I'm here to help. Right? That's the scariest one, right? And then Voltaire was very clear when he said, it's dangerous to be right when your government is wrong. Those are more telling today than any other time. Now, my last question for this panel, and we'll get to some audience questions, is you kind of alluded to this, Katherine. So we go ahead and go through this process, and we get to the stage where we're now sitting down and redoing everything, whatever it looks like. How do we make sure the right people are at the table and they don't go and spoil it, and we actually get into even worse trouble than before? How do we go ahead and make sure that we have the right people at the table? Start with this panel, maybe.
Well, in the political world, that is a daunting task because, people, get involved in this for the wrong reasons, and, you need people who have an incredible amount of integrity, an incredible amount of compassion, are incredible listeners, people who don't give antidotes, they actually listen and then, take the action from the listening part, you know what I mean? And, I don't know if there's a whole lot of people on the planet right now who adhere to those kind of morals, that want to be leaders, and because most of our best leaders end up in business, right? They don't end up in politics, unfortunately, because there are some incredible leaders, for the first 40 years of my life, I was around some of the greatest leaders in the hockey world, and I'm talking from the time I was 6 years old, and those three fathers who, coached me for the first 9 years of hockey and instilled incredible morals and values. And they didn't even teach me about hockey. Taught me about life, because the reason why we put our kids in sports is to create quality human beings, not professional athletes, right? And that has gotten so lost in, that, parents are walking around talking about their 8-year-old kid who's going to make it to the NHL. And I'm like, what? Why? No, and I go, well, there's only 700 jobs in the NHL. And guess what? Most of them are taken because Ovechkin has a 10-year deal and Crosby has a 10-year deal and Malkin has a 10-year deal. So I go, you got 8,000 kids worldwide playing for 60 jobs a year. That's it. There's no more jobs. And so those like we've lost kind of what reality really is, and what do we want for first ourselves, then our families, and then our community, right? And, you know, I've spent $1 million on therapy. I've done every kind of therapy known to mankind. I've done 10,000 hours of therapy. And we're talking about we need a mass healing on the planet, okay? Well, the cheapest, most effective kind of therapy is basically what we're doing today, called group therapy, where you get a bunch of people in a room and you're sharing thoughts and you're sharing ideas and you're using vulnerability to create safe spaces. And when you have the safe space in the room, then people feel comfortable and okay to talk about their secrets. And until we get to that phase in this insanity that we're living in, I don't see any way out other than that exercise. Because when I'm on the road, when I'm traveling, all I see every single day is pain and suffering. That's it. That's all I see, because they look to me as the person who can provide the safe space where they can tell me that secret. Well, there's not enough for the amount of trauma, for the amount of mental illness, and the amount of addiction that we have on the planet. There's not enough skilled people for the amount of people that need help. But if you have trauma in your story, guess what? You're a healer, because you have the experience, you have the understanding, you have the compassion and the understanding for that kind of emotional pain and suffering, right? So this is how we do it, whether it's political or therapeutic or whatever. The only way out of this is community, 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 without ego. Only with compassion, empathy, love, caring. That's the only way we're going to get out of this. And God is the CEO of this movement. That's it.
God bless you, Theo, for that one. Absolutely. And God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, right?
Yes.
Got to listen.
Yeah, so like in a democracy, the quality of the leadership reflects the quality of the population, because the people are voting in the leaders. So if we have low quality leaders like we do, it's because like the general character of our population has declined. And so we used to have better leaders like statesmen, and we don't have that anymore. And my view is that's because we've turned away from God. Like Canada in a general sense had more Christian influence in the past. And as we've turned away from God, like it reflects in our own characters, and it reflects in our voting choices, and it reflects in our leadership. So fundamentally, we will never have good leaders unless the population turns back to God. And so that's my answer.
Hear, hear. Well, I think this is a great way to end this portion of this of the panel, because I couldn't agree more. You know, one of the things that Art and I often talk about is this whole notion of what is our worldview. So what is an independent Alberta's worldview going to be? Well, our heritage is based on Christian principles and values, and that's where we derive our moral compass. That's actually the foundation for our government and the decisions that we believe collectively make sense for our new nation. But the problem is that we don't agree anymore about what the worldview is. And that started happening after World War II, but in Canada in the 1980s with the advent of the Charter and Pierre Elliott Trudeau's crusade into bringing multiculturalism to Canada. So, you know, I don't know if all the answers are here, but I think with God running the show, and, you know, what does that mean? Well, it means we just get out of the way. We look for leaders who are in humility, who are humble. We look for leaders who walk the talk. We look for leaders whose actions demonstrate that they can be trusted because they actually do what they say they're going to do. Those are the type of people that I'm looking for to lead this next chapter of Alberta's history. And so, but this is the right opportunity to have this conversation about what worldview is it that we are going to become, and what is it that we are going to honor and cherish and hold on to. And I choose exactly what it is that founded this great province, and that is a Christian-based moral structure and value system.
Yes, I know this is a significant topic, because even as we organize, different parties or initiatives, what are the core values that are being expressed around the table? And it's going to be very important that we're basically on the same page, for sure. Now, I can reflect back to my years in the police department, and I went into major crimes investigation, and I had to work with a team of other men, to, we had a goal, of course, and that was to catch the bad guys and throw them in the slammer. Well, and to do that, you needed to have a team of people, because some of these crimes were very significant, required a number of investigators. And every time they struck a new unit, that is a shift of some guys going out and others coming in, it was almost like a knife fight. We had to have our egos put aside on this whole thing, so that we could all work in the same direction. It took a little time, but ultimately, with the leader in charge, which would be the staff sergeant or the inspector, that all fell into place. And then once we were there, we could all work in unison. We each had our own skills. We were each good at one thing or another, but as a team, united, we accomplished quite a bit. Now, with some of the organizations that that I've participated in over this freedom group, there's been a lot of different agendas, that didn't we didn't coalesce on it. And even though we tried, even with Katherine and I, we've held meetings that were attempting to bring people together, that it just wasn't going to work out. There were other reasons and other agendas that you never saw on the surface, but when it came right down to making a decision to be part and parcel of a team that we're going to move all in one direction, it didn't happen. And so it does go back really to what's your worldview? What do you see as your mission that you're going to accomplish no matter what? And to be able to share that equally amongst each person. That's going to be your core group. When I look back over the Reform Party now, there was a core group of people, a very small group actually, and they sort of set the framework out for us. And then it grew into a substantial organization. So and it had to be monitored. It had to be guided, because in politics, you wonder where some of these people come from that want to have an opinion. You shake your head and say, well, where did that come from? It just seems like everybody comes out of the woodwork and has an opinion, and some of them are really off the wall. So you have to guide that all into one direction. And I think that core group is where we're going to be really focusing on. Then, it's not going to be broken up. It's not going to be defeated, even if it's attacked. And I think that's where we as a group of leaders have to reach that point. And for me as a Christian, I seek to please my God, and realize that we must work together. If we all have the one goal, and And the wisest man that ever lived spelled it out in one sentence. You know, when he tried to understand why this corruption was in the world, he tried to understand the mind of God. The more he delved into it, the more questions he had. And he couldn't come up with anything close. So he got frustrated. And in the end, he summed up his advice was in one sentence. And it was basically this: love God with your whole heart, mind, and soul. Obey his commandments. Trust him. And all else is vanity and chasing after the wind. But what people don't realize just on that, love God with your whole heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. It's loving your neighbor as yourself. So if you see him in trouble, then that's going to be your main goal up here. You're going to think, I have to do what is best for my neighbor. Not for me. I may have to sacrifice something. It's for my neighbor. You know, and I know there's people in this room that have thought this way and acted that way. I'll not to embarrass you, Dr. Hodgkinson, but you're one such man. And others that have stood up and taken a hit, or two or three or four, you know, and still remain steadfast. Nothing's changed in their message. Nothing's changed in their mind. And I see that as the ideal group of people to form and lead an organization or a party or an initiative. But it takes a while to get there, and there's going to be failures along the way. So that's the way I see it, and that's the way I would advise somebody else to look at it as well.
Watch out, everyone. I'm a pragmatic son of a bitch. What do we want? We want to win.
Yeah.
Here's my take on winning. I've been around this freedom thing for 5 years, and I can tell you categorically, you're the choir. You're not the great unwashed out there who've been protected from information. The average person doesn't give a damn about freedom. They'll trade it off for a trinket. It's not the winning ticket for this election. In my opinion, the winning ticket for this election is called money. And let me explain the three elements that will get us there. We need a leader, we need top down, bottom up, and a platform. Because if we don't have a platform, big oil is going to fight this tooth and nail. They want stability, they want some predictability. They don't give a damn who they're working with, so long as they can make money. And if we can't convince big oil that we can carry this off, it's a fatuous idea, independence. It will not happen. They'll fight it tooth and nail. But if we have those three elements, a leader, the bottom-up rallies across the province, and a platform like the Parti Quebec had, they were a formidable force. They had people in waiting to make a government, not just an idea. Big oil needs predictability. And in my opinion, the secret sauce for winning this thing is women. The females in this audience, listen to me. You've been abused, misled, forced to work, many of you, and you didn't want to. Before the Second World War, most women did not work. They were the central person in the family. They kept the family together. The messaging for me comes down to sound bites for winning. It's called women may not need to work, because this province could be so prosperous, if big oil allows us to be so. We could be so prosperous that most women would not have to work. Now, what an incredible message that is to get people on side if we become that prosperous. That, to me, is the secret sauce to win this election. And the other secret sauce, and many of you are not going to like to hear this, including many of this panel, and I don't care, because I want to win. The things that have to be off the table. By way of context, my wife is a devout Roman Catholic. We were in church yesterday. I love the serenity. But the things that need to be off the table, in my opinion, are God and abortion. Leave that aside. We want to win this thing, and it's all about the money on the breakfast table. And women need to be persuaded that they can make it happen. Thank you very much.
It was a pleasant surprise. Thank you very much, Dr. Hodgkinson. Appreciate that. So I just want to take a moment here as we get somebody come up for some questions. So please don't be shy. You won't be on camera. We're just going to get your question on a microphone here. But as we're getting that ready, I want to remind everybody that next Saturday, same place at 2 p.m., we'll be doing another panel similar to this. I'm covering on this particular one self-determination for Alberta to independence. But the next one's going to be COVID accountability. Because if we don't have accountability, where can we really start? We got to hold some people accountable. So my next panel is going to be Dr. Mackis. It's going to be Sean Buckley. It's going to be Patricia Richardson, who was a commissioner for the NCI. And we also have, who's my last one? Pastor Arthur Pulowski. So go ahead and join us again. It's free to attend because I do believe information should be free. But we do have a donation thing in the back because this room isn't free. But go ahead and if you can contribute, every little bit helps. But our next panel will be next Saturday with those 4 on COVID accountability. And regardless of what happens with this next election with me, we're going to keep these kind of conversations going because we need to keep talking about stuff like this. So the next one's accountability. So thank you, and go ahead and line up for some questions. We'll drop the camera down and we'll do this. We're going to win this thing. I'm going to trademark that, right?
Turn around, or what do you want me to do? No. Okay, there is a federal election happening right now. Anybody know that? Oh, wow. I know that, and I absolutely do not care. It's another distraction. And our total focus and our total DNA should be focused on Alberta independence and delivering that leader who's bold and fearless and will get us there in November so we can get that referendum going this year. We can't keep waiting. I'm 67 years old. I'll give you a little bit of history. I was in my early 20s when Trudeau Sr. destroyed this country, and our savior at that time was Mulroney. And look how he turned out. Another corrupt politician, right? Taking money from Airbus and got away with it. So after that, over the last 30 years, I've been transferred across Canada, and I've been here 30 years. Actually, it's more than 35 years. 35 years. I've been in Alberta 32 years now. And I have become a true Alberta independence-minded individual because that is it. That's all we have. That should be our total focus. That is it. Talk about it. Go to sleep about it. Talk to your neighbors. Get them on board. I'm active on Twitter, which is now known as X. I'm very active on the Western Standard, and I'm always commenting on every article, and it's always about Alberta independence is a solution. There is nothing else. That should be our total focus, folks. That is it. That is it. Yes. And please get that message out. My message always ends, get this out. Share this comment. Share Alberta independence. That is it. That's the only flag. I tore up my Canadian flag. Actually, the wind shredded it. But now I'm flying the Alberta flag. That is it. That is all you should be flying from your flagpole. Thank you.
So,
God bless you all.
Yes, thank you.
So
totally agree with you.
Yeah, on that point, this is being recorded, and we are going to post it on Tuesday. So go ahead and share it out. Make sure everybody takes a good look at this and share it.
Yeah. So I actually have a question for the panel here.
Just watch the camera. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Something I want you to think about, and a question that I have for you. In light of the fact that Mr. Trudeau there is planning to try to steal our firearms from us, what else do they have planned for us, and why are they so desperate to get our guns? That's the first question. And a follow-up with that is, with the actually, sorry, I've lost my train of thought, but I guess an admonition is at hand. Whatever you do, Albertans, do not give up your firearms and your ammunition. Once we do that, we'll be no better than communist China. That's all I have to say. I want to hear your answers here.
So I'll quickly answer that with just kind of 3 words. You de-arm, you demotivate, and then you depopulate.
If the government wants to take your guns, you're probably going to need them for the reason why they're taking away your guns, right? That's been proven over and over and over again. So, yeah. So, yeah, I think
They
we
want
all
to take
agree.
the guns away from the wrong people is the issue. You know, I when I was in Ottawa, there was I had an encounter with a guy that lived down in Kanesatake. It was he was on the reserve, and it's an island right in the St. Lawrence River. Anyways, he was complaining. As it turned out, he was a smuggler himself, but he was complaining about the other smugglers that were taking his business away. Anyways, we went down onto the island, and he was showing us what happens when goods are smuggled. And a lot of them are guns. A lot of guns, people, and drugs. So the contraband comes in from the States. It's taken control of on the Canadian side, and all it is a imaginary line drawn down a portion of the island, and the one side is Canada, the other side is the United States, but it's considered a separate nation by the Indians, and it's recognized by the government. So you have that kind of a crazy scenario. Anyways, the smugglers would bring in guns by the boatload, load them up, shoot their automatic weapons on the other side of the bank of the St. Lawrence River. It was a message: nobody show up on the river, keep away, the smugglers are going to come. And they have these high-powered boats. They go across the river. They dump all their contraband off on the other side, and the gangs from Toronto, Montreal, other places of the country pick them up, distribute them. That's how it works. The RCMP know what's all going on. They even shoot at the police helicopter when it flies over with automatic fire, and they do nothing. So you have all of this craziness going on, and yet they'll go after the rancher and the farmer and the sportsman that want to take and control his gun, because they know they've got these other guys already under control in a way, but they don't have the ordinary citizen who has a firearm. Don't give them up.
So keep in mind the number one unnatural cause of death in the 20th century was democide. People murdered by their own governments that were disarmed by those same governments. Mao, Stalin, Hitler, you name it. The list of the rogues gallery is enormous.
Yeah.
You disarm, kiss not only your freedoms goodbye, but kiss your life goodbye. Because like you say, they're after us.
Well, I interviewed Tucker Carlson, and I said, is there one piece of advice you would like to give to Canadians? And without hesitation, he goes, don't give up your guns.
Yeah, as Katherine said earlier, do not comply. Do not comply.
That's right. When COVID hit, I came to Alberta. I was in massive fear. I came to take care of my parents. And I think one of the things that kept me sane was a mantra: love wins, good wins, God wins. And if God wins, we all win. Right. But I still see in the freedom movement a lot of people run by fear. People fund a terrorist government with their income tax based on fear. People eat what I call the enemy's diet based on fear and participate in addiction. This is not going to come from the top down. We have a toxic enemy's government. So the solution of creating a new government doesn't seem like a solution to me. How do we get people to truly act from love instead of fear, so that we can actually govern with love for ourselves and our neighbor instead of out of fear?
Well, you know, like, for the most part, I agree with your sentiment. But the thing is, the weird thing about us as humans that I've realized over the past number of 5 years in particular, that I've kind of jumped into a more political solution, is that people want to be led, actually.
Oh, yeah.
And by and large, people aren't instinctively, I don't know if it's because it's been weaned out of us, that instinct, because of years of institutionalized indoctrination. But the thing is, so I would disagree with you a little bit. We do need leadership, and we need to actually, I think, and in fact, Colonel Redmond made this point during COVID as well, is that he believed that this could have been turned around if one premier in Canada stood up against all the nonsense, like really stood up. Yeah. Because all it takes is that one person to shine that light and to be the voice. Now, it's incumbent upon everybody else to get behind that voice. But right now, we have a completely inept leadership base.
But it's because our system is the enemy system, and they don't allow even anyone in this room who has the best heart, who has the smartest mind and the best of intentions,
but if
they were to go into that government, would be facing the same things that Danielle Smith gets called a traitor from, because she's playing in the enemy system and she doesn't have the power and control that everyone thinks she does.
Well, actually, you know what? I tend to think that what I see in a leader and what I wish Danielle Smith would do is just tell the frickin' truth.
Yeah.
Tell the truth and let the chips fall where they may, and don't be so worried about the special interest lobby that's going to come raining down on your parade. I think if you tell the truth and you do so with integrity, then she may not get reelected because the people backing her, sure, but that's the price you got to pay. When you know where your salvation is, death here is like probably a welcome relief.
It's a gift.
Exactly.
But what I was going to say is, I've been delving in, frequency and vibration, and the highest vibration is authenticity. And so if you want people to follow you, then you need to be as authentic as you possibly can be. And, me making this comeback in life has been all about trying to live as authentic as I possibly can, which means, telling the whole entire story from start to finish and not caring about what anybody says or judgment or whatever it is. And so, and the new wave of medicine moving forward is frequency, vibration. That's where this is all going. And so how I think it doesn't have to be one person. It'll be all of the people who show up as their authentic selves that are going to lead this movement.
Yeah. I'm not sure if your question reflected that Premier Smith doesn't have the ability to fix what's wrong. Is that basically what you were saying?
I believe it's not that simple. I don't believe that she can stand up and make dictates without getting bumped off or kicked out. I'm not defending her. I don't know her.
Who's going to do that to her?
Well, there are billion-dollar industries that if she goes against will quite happily
technically,
get rid of her.
Wouldn't there be, I don't think there'd be a single person in this room that would not support her if she said, enough is enough. I see the problem. I'm going to dismantle. I'm talking about broadly, even amongst the freedom people that are fighting and pushing against her. She's elected to the highest position in the province. The highest position. She has the authority to go places that you and anybody else in this room cannot go and dig around and find out what's wrong. She has that authority. Why isn't she using it?
You don't think she has bosses and people she answers to?
Who? She is the premier. She's elected to the highest spot.
In an ideal world, we are her bosses. but in reality, we are not.
Unless you're compromised. You know, I went through this whole situation in Ottawa too. You know, I went for lunch one day, and one of the members wanted to come and he wanted to ask me something. He says, I want a question on question period, and they won't let me. And he's starting to cry in front of me, and I'm saying, what is the problem? You know, who cares about whether you get a question in question period? You're hired, you got authority, use the authority you're given. You know, I mean, anybody in charge of any agency is going to use their authority. If there's a problem, they're going to fix it. You know, why should she be any different? I have a problem with her saying that, well, my wings are clipped, I cannot do anything, and she's used that statement. She can use that. She has the authority to do it. You know, but she chooses otherwise, and then she backs up her choice by continuing to provide more damaging initiatives to our families, to the elderly, to our business, and it goes on and on and on. So no, I don't buy that anymore. I think that she has chosen to go that way. She has chosen to go that way, and to the detriment of the rest of the province. So
People get put into those positions for those reasons.
Yeah.
When have we had a leader that has actually had integrity and has not compromised? Where? Tell me.
Okay, so I can't answer that.
I think
one, but-
We have people right now, like Jason, who has demonstrated.
I'm talking about
No, I understand that, but the thing is, yeah, this is. But you've made some really good points, and so now it's our job to have these conversations with our families, with our employers, with the people around us, our co-workers, whatever, because let me tell you, like it's the fear is real, like. You know, like the idea that this vote splitting is an issue, that the uniparty doesn't exist, that we have choice, like all of this brainwashing needs to be shattered. And so, yes, as foot soldiers of the truth, which I think most people in this room are, it is our job, right? And so we can only do what we can do, and that is by living, as Theo has suggested, as authentically and honestly as possible with humility. And that is attractive. That is attractive for people. But the thing is, we're in this weird state of insanity right now, where I fear that pain will be the touchstone for change. Pain, unfortunately, I think we are going to have to hit rock bottom, because people would rather vote for Pierre Poutine, who has never had a real job in his entire life, rather than, and the same old BS, somebody who did not say anything meaningfully constructive around COVID. I mean, you know, like there are obvious shortcomings with who we're choosing, right? And so we still just need to do what we can, be the foot soldiers, and get this message out as much as we can, right? Support people that support your values. Ultimately,
You can either do your job or protect your job, but you can't do both.
Okay, fair comment. So the quick answer I'm going to give to you is, when we have the opportunity to sit down and redo our system, we do not need a constitutional monarch, the Westminster system, and we really shouldn't be doing first past the post either. That creates a two-party system. We should also have real recall, and we should be electing all the positions that are important to our lives. So the chief medical examiner should be elected. The judges should be elected. The police force, the top, should be elected so that we can recall them. My biggest concern is when I hear leadership says, your voice matters at the election, go away. Well, that should not be the case. Just like the rest of us, our performance should be reviewed all the time. And we should be always worried as a leader that we may be gone tomorrow.
Another good way that we could handle it, and if Smith was really motivated to do so, she could put in robust whistleblower legislation to protect people from persecution and prosecution for coming forward to exposing this stuff, but she has no interest in doing that.
Yeah, well, the biggest reason why we're in this state is because we can't hold any of these people to accountability. So the new system has to have built-in accountability at so that these weasels, big oil, all these corporate, big everything, can't get in there. It has to be like at every turn, they got to be locked out. Because we, the people, need to hold you to accountability, because when we can't hold you to accountability, this is what happens. Right?
Correct. And this will help us get back to a justice system, not a legal system, especially when the judges are worried that the public's watching. And one quick change is the public record should be available to the public. You have to pay thousands of dollars just to get your own record if you're in court. I think all of that should be transparent, like immediately. We should all be seeing the public record, because that's what it's called, a public record. So let's go ahead and do things like that. Any small tweaks along the way absolutely will make big change, because I want every single leader worried that their job is going to end tomorrow if they're not doing the right thing for the people. That's one quick way to make sure this change happens. We've got a nice lineup here, so we'll go ahead and get a question. Yeah.
I think the Swiss system, they had multiple referendums per year. We've only had a handful here in Alberta. We had the equalization one, which was symbolic.
And ignored.
Yep. And we had the daylight savings one, and it was...
Symbolic and ignored?
But the daylight savings one, it was badly worded by the UCP. So I'm just having a couple of questions about the separation process. Who writes the question? And how can we be sure it's a binding referendum? And what other things in the Clarity Act might derail the process? Like the negotiations after the referendum, are they divorce negotiations? Who gets the parks? Who gets the native reserves? Or are they negotiations, here's our list of demands to stay?
Well, that's the irony of the Clarity Act. It's not clear actually what happens. So there's some guidance there and some big questions that still have to be answered. And you brought up some great ones. For example, my concern with Danielle Smith and her conversation around independence is she says we're going to go around with the What's Next panel and find out what questions should be in the next referendum. That already violates the Clarity Act. It says one clear question. So if she's trying to get away with multiple questions, we already can't take that to the House of Commons.
Exactly.
And the next part of that is it goes to the House of Commons to go ahead and decide whether or not it was a clear enough question or whether or not there's a clear enough majority. So if we have the current government in there, the 338 is going to 343, and we have the same parties, I guarantee you, even if we came back with like 61%, they're going to say that's not a clear majority. You need at least one voice in there to stand up against them, and that's exactly what we're fighting for here today, and this is what I'm trying to fight for. We need at least one voice in there that says, no. We need to debate and argue this and not cry to somebody like Art and says, I don't get a chance at question period. Quite literally, bring security to shut me up because nobody else will be able to. So we do need somebody in there that's strong enough to stand up against the House and the other 342 who are going to say, you're splitting up Canada, you're going to cause a problem. Great. That's exactly what we need to do if that's what the voice of Alberta is.
Well, Smith isn't going to do that, but if we get the 600,000 and bring the referendum ourselves, if, say, the APP brings the referendum, can the APP write the question?
Yeah, but the question's pretty clear. I think Jeffrey Rath was good on that one, and it would be, do you want Alberta to separate from Canada and form its own country? That's pretty clear, yes or no. So I think we're going to get there. I think our the hurdle is not going to be the question. It's going to be whether or not the House agrees that we had a majority. And even then, we may be in a position where we had one, and they still voted down. We would then have to look at things like declaring independence or some other opposition.
Declare independence. Who gives a shit?
Why are we following laws when the other side doesn't follow it anyways?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Just leave.
Yeah.
We're out of here.
We're done.
We're out of here. Gone. See ya.
Well, I think we'll be in
try and collect.
We'll be in that position if it is a clear majority, but they don't accept it.
Yeah.
I think if that actually happens, where Alberta said clearly, like 61% said no more equalization, but nothing happened. But if that's where we're at, I think Alberta itself would be able to make a second option, a plan B, bring the second line in and finish up the job, right?
Can I just comment on the equalization thing? Like the whole equalization referendum was actually based on a erroneous interpretation of the secession reference case. Like, so in 1995, that's when Quebec most recently voted and almost separated. As a result of that, the federal government sent a reference question to the Supreme Court asking the Supreme Court's opinion if Quebec could unilaterally secede from Canada. So the Supreme Court said, no, Quebec cannot unilaterally secede from Canada. However, and this is where the Clarity Act stuff comes in, if Quebec held a referendum with a clear question and a clear majority of people voted in favor, then the federal government is obligated to negotiate with Quebec over its independence. So if Quebec held a independence referendum, the federal government's compelled to negotiate. So some professors took that to mean, well, if they can do that with independence, they can do that with another reference question. And that was a false interpretation, but that was the basis of the Alberta government's holding that referendum on a false interpretation or erroneous interpretation of the Supreme Court decision. But then because of that decision, that's why the Clarity Act was passed in 2000 to fill in the details of that. But the Supreme Court says it's written in the context of Quebec. So they're saying Quebec, but it means any province. That Quebec, if they hold this referendum with a clear question and a clear majority votes in favor, then Quebec has the right to pursue secession. So the provinces, they have a right to pursue secession under those conditions. And the Supreme Court also dealt with the issue, what if the federal government just stonewalls after that? And the Supreme Court said, well, other democratic countries will look at this process and they'll see which jurisdiction is going according to democracy and which one's opposing democracy. And the most democratic countries, or at least some of them, will recognize, if the province is following the law and the federal government is going to block the law, countries, and especially someone like Donald Trump, will say, hey, this jurisdiction is following the law and the Canada is not following the law, and we believe in democracy, so we're going to recognize the democratic result. Yeah. And so that's the Supreme Court wrote that into their decision as kind of, probably as a warning to the federal government that you have to go through the process. You can't block the province. And then just to throw something in afterwards, in 2008, Kosovo declared independence unilaterally from Serbia, and Canadian government recognized it right away. So constitutional lawyers have brought up the question, if Canada will recognize another jurisdiction declaring independence unilaterally, then why can't a province in Canada? You know what I mean? It's like the Canadian government is wanting it both ways, that we can recognize another jurisdiction's unilateral declaration of independence, but not in our own country. Well, then, other countries are going to wonder, well, is Canada going to recognize one in our jurisdiction, so maybe we'll recognize one in theirs. You know what I mean? So it kind of throws things makes things a bit more confusing, but it undermines Canada's credibility. So the important thing is, though, that the Supreme Court says a province has the right to pursue independence under those conditions.
And that's what Jeffrey Rath is going down to Washington to talk to Trump's team about. If we go ahead and do this and they try to block us and stop us, will the U.S. recognize the independence of Alberta? And if that happens on an international stage and they say, yes, we recognize Alberta as an independent country, we will have a step closer to doing exactly that. Cheers.
Hello, guys. Hi, thanks for coming here to Stony Plains amazing panel and all those questions, everything. A question to Art and maybe Michael can answer both questions as well too. In regards to the Reform Party specifically, is that like the Western version of the Bloc Québécois Party federally?
No, not really. The Reform Party gave rise to, it was through great dissatisfaction how the East was treating, especially Alberta, with the National Energy Program. It really spawned quite an uprising within the province, and it was quite successful. Quebec is... I don't really know what Quebec is out after, because I don't think they really want to separate. Things are too good for them here. They've played around in this field for a long time. I was in Ottawa in 1995 when they were 1% away from separation, but it never happened. And but it's like their leader Blanchette, and he just reiterated it in this last. Debate that they had with all the leaders, is that what is ever the best for Quebec, we don't care what happens in the rest of Canada. We're just looking after what's going to happen to Quebec. Now he's on the national stage as a political leader for Canada.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah. So all they're concerned about is being able to gain the greatest benefit that they can from the country, and they'll stay in that position, and it seems like who knows for how long. I think if this rise in opposition within Alberta takes hold, it's going to be a different story. This is final for us. I don't see us playing the same game as Quebec. And another side with Quebec is that, you know, the more recent comments that I've been hearing from people, you know, that have stood against their government for whatever reason, even if it's for corruption, and they make their voice heard, they come under attack for it.
Or they move here.
So they don't want that freedom. They don't want the freedom. We're seeking to have a free society, you know, where we can gather, we can express our viewpoints, etc. That's not happening in Quebec, and I don't see it changing, even if they do separate. But we're different here.
Yeah.
And we'll quickly wrap up here because my wife's back with her arms crossed. I know what that means. And we definitely have some panelists that need to get home. So let's go ahead and we're going to wrap this up. But you're free to, sorry to the rest of you standing there, you're free to grab one of us in the next little bit and ask your questions directly. But we do have to wrap it up if you want to go ahead and.
Oh, I just want to thank everybody for taking time out on this Easter weekend to listen and contemplate these very, very important issues. And one of the reasons why I'm here is because I support Jason, and I support what he's doing, not only in his private life with his podcast and the community, but as somebody who is put their neck on the line, so to speak, and have ran in a political in an election. It takes a lot. It takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of strength, and it takes a lot of cojones. And Jason is some of the strengths I see about Jason are his compassion, his ability to listen, and his sensible nature. And I think that this community would be very well served with those qualities in an elected representative. And I really encourage you all to encourage your workmates, your colleagues, your friends and family to vote for him in this election, in this riding. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And I wasn't expecting that.
Well, I will say the same thing. You know, when you asked me to come and I knew it was you, I said, I'm in. So I appreciate everything you've done.
Appreciate that. You don't have to say anything.
Good luck. Good luck. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Yeah. And to the people of Parkland that came out today, thank you so much. Thanks for your vote today. I really appreciate that. And let's give you all a round of applause as well for being here as well. So on that note, thank you very much for being here, and God bless.